Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
Arriving at his ex-wife's house a year after the divorce, her husband froze upon learning of her fate. Amanda ran to the kitchen sink and splashed the coffee she had just drunk from a cup. "Catherine is messing with me again," the woman thought with anger and despair. "Stop hitting her with a belt," Amanda said out loud. She had woken up this morning in a good mood for once. It was Saturday, the whole weekend was ahead of her. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering lazily where the sun bunny had come from. She didn't immediately realize that it was a mirror lying on her bedside table, on which the rays were falling. How quiet is the house? Amanda wondered. It was 10 o'clock. John and Catherine should have been up by now. She planned to go to the mall and buy herself the pants she'd been eyeing on the store's website for a while and pick up some clothes for her stepdaughter. Afterward, she and her husband could spend the day together. Amanda turned on her side and saw a note from her husband gone on business. Urgently summoned. But John won't know when he'll be back, she thought. Why does he have to be the one to be pulled on weekends? If the boss himself had traveled like this, he would not have sent others. Her husband was the deputy head of a large construction firm. He often personally traveled to the sites, including on weekends. This dampened Amanda's mood a little, but she tried not to give in to sadness. The woman threw a robe over her nightgown and went down to the first floor. In the kitchen, she boiled water in an electric kettle, poured ground coffee into a cup, and poured boiling water over it. "John wouldn't fail to remind me that there's a coffee machine in the house," Amanda smiled. "But it was nice to be able to make coffee the old-fashioned way, like when I was a student." She covered the cup with a saucer and went to the bathroom to wash up. Amanda decided to take a shower and stood under the cool jets for about 10 minutes. Then she returned to the kitchen, looked out the window and smiled at the sunny summer day that promised only good things. But it was a sip of coffee that ruined everything. Apparently, while I was in the bathroom, Catherine came into the kitchen and put something in the drink. Amanda pondered. What kind of nasty stuff did she find? Was it black pepper or Brooklyn? She had no desire to taste the liquid a second time. She emptied the cup into the sink and sighed. Her mood was hopelessly ruined. For the 6 years that Amanda had lived with John, she had tried to find common ground with Catherine, his daughter from her first marriage, but she had failed. And it all started with their very first meeting, when a man brought his then not yet wife, but the woman he loved to introduce his 9-year-old daughter. "I had one mom, and I do not need a new one," said the girl, turned around and went into the room. "Will she get used to it?" John then divorced his hands. "It's been 3 years since Mary died. She misses her," Amanda said. "A child is attached to her mother, and I'm not her aunt yet." "That's all right," her husband replied. But it didn't happen. When the woman offered to go with the girl to the children's park to spend time together and get acquainted, she seemed happy at first, but then throughout the walk was terribly cranky. "I'm dizzy. I feel sick. I don't want to feed them and I don't want to eat myself. I don't want ice cream either." She refused even her favorite treat. John and Amanda were a little confused by her behavior, so they came home and tried to have dinner together. "My stomach hurts," Catherine said, and retreated to her room. So it went on. The girl perceived the new woman of the father exclusively in the bayonet. The man, on the contrary, only dreamed of meeting a new love after several years of lonely life after the death of his wife. "So smart and beautiful," he said of Amanda. And they met in a public restroom at the train station. "It's a shame to tell this story," the woman laughed later, recalling the situation. But she was not laughing then. In February, she came from her district center to the big city, where she found a job. The bus ride took her only 2 hours, so there were no sanitary stops. By the end of the trip, Amanda had a terrible urge to go to the bathroom. She jumped out of the vehicle and almost ran to the bus station building, but ran into a closed bathroom door. The restroom was closed for repairs, the note on it said. The nearest one was in the train station building. "What the hell is this?" the woman exclaimed in frustration. But there was no way out, and she hurried toward the train station, which was nearby. To get there, she had to pass through a small square, then go down into an underground passage, where people in a hurry were also pushing and literally stepping on each other's heels. God, couldn't the stations be connected somehow? Many people change from train to bus and vice versa, she muttered to herself. She was sweating in her down jacket from the fast walk. Strands of her brown hair were poking out from under her hat, and the suitcase she was dragging behind her looked like it was going to tear her arm off. Already barely tolerable, Amanda walked into the building and saw the huge lines. The women's restroom. And it's in a train station. However, the toilet is working. One of the people standing there was indignant. There were no people in front of the men's. Amanda, disregarding propriety, opened the door, saw a vacant stall and ran in without thinking. The woman slammed the door shut behind her with a jerk and finally went to the bathroom. Whoosh, she sighed in relief and smiled. That incredible feeling of relief. And then she saw that she hadn't closed the latch on the stall door. But it didn't matter, because luckily no one was trying to get in from the other side. The woman pushed the handle and pushed the door open to get out. But it wouldn't open. The handle didn't go all the way down. Amanda jerked on it some more, but to no avail. "What kind of bad luck is this?" she said aloud. "Madam?" came a voice from the next stall. A little surprised to hear that woman's voice. "But do you need help?" Very much, Amanda ventured, embarrassed. "I think the lock's jammed. The knob won't budge." Just a second, she heard the sound of water running from the stall. "Okay, now my hands are blistered. I'll think of a way to get you out." Amanda heard the sound of water running from the faucet, then the sound of a zipper being stretched, and then some rustling. "Found it," the man said cheerfully. He started picking something in the lock, and after a minute he swung the door open. "And here I am, saving the princess imprisoned in the tower," he joked, holding a screwdriver. "Yeah," Amanda smiled. "A good princess upset with the press in front of the toilet." "You're a fine lady." The man winked at her and she admired his brown eyes. Dark-haired, handsome man. "Thank you," seriously the woman said as she left the stall. "And I'm sorry to barge into the men's room, but I'll tell you the whole epic with the search for the restroom." "Can we go out of here?" the man suggested, "and continue our acquaintance over a cup of tea? My treat." "I agree," Amanda said. "Where can I get something to eat here? I don't know the city." "Let's go to a pancake house right here at the station," the man suggested. "My name is John, by the way." "Amanda," the woman replied. "I agree. The pancake house is good. Let's go before the next leg of the road." They went to the far end of the building, where a sign with the image of appetizing pancakes hung. Once inside, they placed their order. Amanda chose cheese pancakes and John chose chicken pancakes, plus 2 cups of black tea. We sat down at a table while we waited. "Where are you from?" the man started the conversation. "On business or visiting? Is this your first time here?" "No, not for the first time. I've already come once for an interview. I'm from the district center. We don't have much work there. I found a vacancy here. I got hired, and I'm moving." Brevity is the sister of talent, John smiled. In a few sentences, they informed me of the events of the past few weeks. "And what do you do?" the woman asked. "Where did you get a screwdriver all of a sudden?" "I work in a construction company. Constantly on the road, inspects objects. I accidentally picked up a screwdriver at the construction site after checking the fasteners. I found it on the train, called my colleagues and told them that I would bring it back the next time I visited them." "It was a lucky coincidence for me," Amanda said. "I don't know how long I would have had to sit there if it hadn't been for you." "Oh, our order is ready." John got up and went and got it. "Voila." He put the tray on the table. "I'll pay for it. I insist," the woman said. "You have a lot of money you need for rent. You'll need it now. Keep it, and I won't have to rent a hostel. That's why I got this job. It pays well and I have a place to live. After all, a hostel is cheaper than an apartment." I see, the man replied. But still, I'm not used to paying for women. So I insist on treating you. All right, Amanda accepted. Where do you live? I'm in the suburbs. I own my own house, built it a few years ago for my family. The woman blushed a little because she was starting to like this man. Are you married? Not anymore? No, he answered with restraint. My wife died, a transient cancer. My daughter is left behind. It's just the two of us. I'm sorry. My condolences, Amanda said sympathetically. How old is your daughter? She'll be 9 soon. She's my pride and joy. She's a good student. She plays sports. What kind of sports? I just got a job. State Athletics Training Center. She does skiing, plans to participate in races, but so far she's only enrolled in a sports school. Enrollment starts at age 9, but the coach was cooperative. Her daughter is a little younger, but they say she has abilities. Are you an athlete? What kind of sport do you do? I'm not. I take care of the athlete's health. I'm a nurse. Oh, how interesting. It's a bit of a catch-22, if you'll pardon the expression. I've been getting some injections lately. Don't think I'm sick. I just banged my elbow on a door jamb. Now it's a nerve problem. I can't feel my fingers. There's this nasty feeling that the whole nerve from elbow to hand is like a taut rope. Yeah, it's a minor injury, but it's a nasty one, Amanda agreed. Well, I do not want to go to the clinic for injections only to lose time in lines. So I was thinking of hiring a visiting nurse when I get back from my business trip. Maybe you'd be willing to help me out. Oh, I'd love a part-time job. But how would you get to the suburbs? There's a shuttle bus. If it's convenient for you, I'd rather invite you to our company's office. It's downtown. I'm just working all the time. My daughter is looked after by a governess and my mother-in-law. And me, staying late and at night, it would hardly be convenient for you to come to our house. It's a deal, Amanda said. I'll just check my schedule at the new place and contact you to discuss a convenient time. And for that we need to exchange phone numbers, the man smiled. Write mine down. That's how they began to communicate. And for 10 days, which lasted a course of prescribed injections, they became close. This was undoubtedly due to the daily contemplation of my naked heel, John joked. Yes, I appreciated your confidence, Amanda agreed. They began seeing each other on John's rare days off. His daughter Catherine was very unhappy with Amanda's appearance. Daddy, let's go out. I miss you so much. Why are you leaving home for that woman? The girl asked unhappily. Don't you love me anymore? Of course I do. I just want to take a little break from work and family matters and spend time with someone I like, the man said as affectionately as possible. You'll like her, you'll see. However, the girl took her father's new friend in stride. John and Amanda did not give up hope that the girl will eventually change her mind. But that didn't happen. After the first meeting and a trip to the park, they tried to go to the movies together, but Catherine again only frowned, showing that she was not interested in everything that was happening. You know what I suggest? John suddenly suggested to Amanda the next day. I think if we all live under the same roof, Catherine will realize that we're serious, and she'll soften up on you. I don't think it's time yet, Amanda shrugged. Maybe we should wait. Why wait until we're old? I want to live a full life with my family now, not put everything off for the future, the man insisted. The woman agreed, even though it seemed like a bad idea to her still only a few months after meeting him. She gave up her dorm room and moved in with John. Catherine took this fact with unexpected calm. A week later, Amanda realized why. Honey, my childhood friend Charlie is coming to visit us on Sunday, John said on Friday. He lives in another city and wants to show his fiancée his native New York. But he wants to meet my fiancée too. He hugged the woman and kissed her. And I'm already in bride status, Amanda smiled as she returned the kiss and also hugged the man. Of course, I'm an honest man and I always marry the ones I love, John jokingly assured her. If that can be considered a proposal, then I'm in, Amanda said. "That's just in case," the man said affectionately. "We'll talk about it later." On Sunday, Amanda woke up early. She set the alarm clock for 8 because it was going to be an active day. She had to feed the guests breakfast after the road, then walk around the city, show the sights to Charlie's fiancée, and in the evening have dinner at a restaurant. Amanda really wanted to make a good impression on the people close to John. "Now we'll have a quick coffee," she thought as she looked at the sleeping John. "Then I'll do breakfast, and closer to their arrival I'll do my makeup and hair." With those thoughts, she stood up and reached for her glasses, which were on the nightstand. The woman had poor eyesight, so she wore contact lenses for work and other occasions when she left the house. At home, she wore glasses. Now Amanda was running her hand over the surface of the nightstand, trying to find the glasses, but it was as if they weren't there. "That's odd," the woman thought. "Maybe John moved them. But why? And I don't want to wake him up." She got up, bent over to the nightstand, trying to see what was on it. Then squatted down and ran her hands across the floor, deciding that the glasses might have fallen there. Amanda then looked for them everywhere on the nightstand at John's side, on the dressing table where her makeup was, and on the windowsill. But the glasses were nowhere to be found. "God, I threw away my contact lenses yesterday," remembered the woman. "How am I going to get ready for the guests?" John was supposed to buy the lenses. Later in the morning, he was going to meet the guests at the train station and could stop at the optician's on the way. For now, without lenses or glasses, Amanda was effectively paralyzed. She couldn't cook, she couldn't clean the house. The feeling of helplessness made her cry. What happened? John woke up. Upon hearing what had happened, he said he would go get the lenses right away. John, at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, where's the optician open? Amanda sighed. "I'll find out which store opens first," the man said soothingly. "In the meantime, you try to relax." Amanda went back to bed, since she couldn't do anything anyway. John picked up his phone, went online, looked for the nearest optician open from 9 o'clock, and started to get ready to go. "Let's listen to some music," he said, handing Amanda a small player. "It helps me on business trips when I get tired of looking at my phone on the train." Amanda put on the headphones, turned on the player, and closed her eyes. John was right, the tunes distracted her, and it didn't seem so bad that she wouldn't have time to do her hair as she'd planned. The most important thing for her was to feed her guests. "I'll have to do without baking. I won't have time," she realized, and began to rethink the menu. Half an hour later, John returned. Amanda put on her lenses and finally went to wash her face and then to the kitchen. To her surprise, there on the windowsill were her glasses. "John, how did they get here?" she asked in amazement to the man who had entered next. "Did you leave them here?" He laughed. "You've ruined your own mood this morning. I'm sure I didn't put them here. Why would you? How would I have gotten to the bedroom without them?" "Well, maybe you're tired. Took them off, left them on." The man shrugged. But Amanda was sure she couldn't have done such a thing. She had a bad suspicion in her head that she decided not to voice for the time being. In a couple of hours, the guests were to arrive, and she didn't want to meet them with a scandal and without food, so she started cooking. The rest of the day went according to plan. John's friend and his fiancée arrived. Everyone liked each other and had a good time. Even Catherine, who had been taken for a walk around the city, seemed to be in a good mood. "Maybe I'm imagining things for myself," thought Amanda, observing the girl's behavior. But after a few more days, she became convinced of what she already suspected. The child began to constantly do small nasty things to her, then hide something, then in the yogurt spilled cereal, then throws shoes. Amanda just kept quietly tidying up. After one of the first incidents, she tried to inform John about his daughter's antics, but the response was not what she had hoped for. "John, do you really believe I would do such a thing for some reason?" Amanda led the man into the living room where her underwear was strewn across the couch and chairs. "Why would Catherine do such a thing?" he said indignantly. "Because she doesn't like me. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. Remember the stories about the glasses? I don't know why you're snapping at her. It can all be explained by your forgetfulness." "I forgot that I left my underwear all over the room, but you what? Let's drop the subject," the man said irritably. "I love both you and my daughter, so try not to swear." "Nice touch," washed his hands of it, Amanda thought resentfully. Okay, I'm not going to take revenge on the child, I'll be patient. It went on like that for about a year, until the family moved into a new big house. John insisted. I want to see a new family nest in a new place, he told Amanda. I was living with a different family in the old house after all. It's time for us to start our own. You and I have been putting off getting married. But I think we should get married, and the house is officially in your name. You're a little emotional when you talk about such important steps, aren't you? The woman was a little surprised. Perhaps I'm afraid to jinx my happiness, the man smiled. It hurts when you enjoy life, and it is like envy to you as a footstool. Like my first wife died, Catherine had just grown up. I got the job I have now, and everything was going so well. And then it all fell apart. We'll be fine, Amanda said softly. They chose a house together. Catherine was excited about the move. I'll have a big room, the girl rejoiced. Yes, your current one in our old house will seem like a cubbyhole compared to it, John replied. Let's go with your taste. Amanda decided to improve the opportune moment, as long as the girl was in a good mood. Let's you be the one to choose our common house. Look where you like best, what room, what yard, and so on. Okay, Catherine agreed cheerfully. John silently took Amanda's hand and discreetly stroked her fingers in appreciation. They found the house quickly enough. The two-story building was located in a quiet neighborhood. There was a small courtyard in front of the front door, and a large area at the back of the building where they could plant flower beds or vegetables. Trees were already growing their fruit: apples, pears, ornamental and birch trees. The whole family literally fell in love with this place, and the deal to buy it was done. A couple weeks later, they moved in and immediately put their old place on the market. We'll use the money to go on a honeymoon, John said that evening at the first dinner in the new house. And we're going to furnish the place to our liking. And we'll buy you a car, finally. Thank you. I'm very happy right now, Amanda replied. And I'm grateful that you've changed my life. You changed mine, the man looked at her tenderly. Catherine, who was watching the scene, wrinkled her nose but said nothing. 6 months later, the couple played a wedding. There were few guests: John's father, his mother was dead, Amanda's parents, and a few of their closest friends. An unexpected guest was the man's former mother-in-law. He kept good relations with Anna Vitalievna and even decided to invite her to his new marriage. God grant you a long life together, she sincerely wished him, raising her glass. Amanda looked at her gratefully, happy that this woman who had lost her daughter had found the strength to accept the new woman who was taking care of her granddaughter. She didn't know then what her ex-mother-in-law's love for her child, the only family she had left, would mean. I'm not wearing that. Catherine threw her summer dress in Amanda's direction. They'll make fun of me at school. Years passed. Catherine turned 15 and adolescence was in full force. By this time she had won many competitions in cross-country skiing, received a sports category, and was enrolled in the School of Olympic Reserve. The school year was about to begin, and Amanda offered encouragement to update her closet. It was on the day Amanda was going to take her shopping that Catherine ruined her stepmother's morning coffee. I'm an athlete, not a party girl, irritatedly said the girl now, running from one outlet to another. But you're a girl. You have to look like one, Amanda answered her calmly. You can't always wear tracksuits. But I do play sports, Catherine countered. But not all of you. You have to wear something to class, to lectures. I'll see what other people wear, then I'll decide. But thank you for your concern. Catherine finished the conversation. Amanda sighed and followed the stubborn girl to the sportswear store. Buy new tracksuits, it was impossible to understand her stepdaughter. Sometimes she seemed to be good to her stepmother, and sometimes Amanda found that she continued to sneak around. It usually happened after some sort of spat. I wonder what she'll come up with tomorrow, the woman thought curiously, waiting for the girl from the fitting room. Will she put something in my coffee again? Will he delete my files in my laptop or throw out something worse? But surprisingly, there were no consequences. Despite the disagreement at the store, the girl hadn't gotten back at her stepmother in any way. Amanda had really hoped that the simmering conflict would die down on its own when Catherine entered college and moved into the dormitory. But John insisted that his daughter stay at home. "I know what goes on in these dormitories," he said. "I don't want you wasting your time hanging out instead of studying." At that moment, Catherine and Amanda finally shared something in common: disappointed facial expressions. Both had hoped to see each other less often. "Oh well, I'll wait for her to get married," Amanda thought with bitter irony. The everyday life dragged on. Everything went on as usual. John often went on business trips. Amanda worked as a nurse. Catherine was at college until late in the evening. A phone call interrupted the routine, and in December, disaster struck. "We can't find your husband," Amanda got a call from the college that afternoon. "Your little girl has been seriously injured. She's in the emergency room." Amanda didn't remember taking off work and calling a cab. Despite everything, she loved this girl, even though she didn't reciprocate. She ran to the emergency room and learned that Catherine had a displaced tibia fracture and was being prepped for emergency surgery. "Do you need parental consent?" The woman asked the young doctor who admitted Catherine. "Her father is now in another city, and I did not adopt her. Can I give permission?" "It's okay," the doctor replied. "At 15, she can consent to surgery on her own." "Okay," Amanda said, confused. "So it's bad. What's the prognosis?" "I'm not an attending physician. I just examined her and referred her for surgery," the man replied. "Talk to a specialist later. All I can say is that this type of fracture is complex, and rehabilitation after it is very long. But she will not be disabled. She's an athlete." "Let's hope not," shrugged the doctor. "Understand, everything will be clear at the operation. Depends on how well the specialist will be able to assemble the bone. I really can neither scare nor reassure you." "It's fine now." "I'm sorry," Amanda said. "Wait until the surgery is over. The doctors will come out and tell you everything at once." The woman went to wait in the lobby of the clinic. She tried to call John, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he's in negotiations, Amanda thought, even though it had been hours already, and no one still couldn't reach him. How worried is he going to be, poor guy? I guess I can't understand these parental feelings. After all, it's not like I don't have kids. Her thoughts jumped to the unpleasant history of their attempts to have a child. Amanda and John had thought about it a couple of years ago. When their life together had settled down, they were in their early 30s, and the chances of having a baby were quite high. However, Amanda was not able to get pregnant. They had undergone numerous tests that showed the couple to be perfectly healthy. "There are such cases," explained the fertility doctor. "There may be something going on due to nervous tension, and the body doesn't want to get pregnant in a stressful situation of the stressors." Amanda could only remember her relationship with her stepdaughter. Otherwise, she and John had a calm, measured life without upheaval. And it appeared that, ironically, she was unable to have a child because of the presence of another child in her life. Her nervous thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was John. "Oh my God," he said, horrified to hear what had happened. "I'm on my way. I'll be there tomorrow. Take care of everything, please." The girl was operated on immediately. The doctor came out to Amanda and said he was satisfied with the result. Catherine was coming out of anesthesia, and the woman was told that she could visit her tomorrow. Amanda went home. "It's unaccustomedly quiet here," she thought as she entered the house. Amanda went to the bedroom, and from her worry she powerlessly sank down on the bed and fell asleep. It was as if everything went well from there. Catherine was discharged, being warned that she would have a cast for at least 2 months. The girl was very upset because she missed classes and was basically very limited in movement. She sat at home, read a lot, and watched movies. "You look so downcast," Amanda said, looking at her daughter. "What do you want?" "She's very worried about not being able to play her favorite sport," John replied. "It's hard for her at her age to put up with so much. It's all about getting it right," John sighed. "I'm sure she'll catch up with her classmates." But Catherine was not so lucky. When it came to the point to remove the cast and begin the long rehabilitation process, it turned out that the bones are not properly healed, and there were symptoms of osteoporosis. The bone had become less dense and less strong, the doctor explained to John and Amanda. This can lead to new fractures, even from minor stresses. "What should we do?" John asked. His voice trembled. Treat it. First, we have another operation as soon as possible. And then take special drugs to stimulate bone formation. The endocrinologist prescribes them. That's good. Who do you recommend? Clarified the worried father. I would recommend treatment abroad. There are good clinics in Germany, but it will be expensive, you understand. We'll find the money, John replied calmly. They drove home depressed in Amanda's car. The woman was driving. John and Catherine sat in the back. The girl pressed herself against her father and cried quietly, realizing that it will not soon be able to take up skiing and generally return to the usual way of life. I'll have to leave the school, finally raised her voice Catherine. Let's not be in a hurry, John said soothingly and held his daughter to himself. Take a sabbatical for a year. Amanda was silent the whole way there and back. The woman sympathized with Catherine, but she had some very important news of her own that she didn't want to tell her family yet. What good fortune. What bad timing, Amanda thought in the bathroom this morning when she saw the 2 long-awaited stripes on the pregnancy test. No, the good news will have to wait after all. I have to deal with Catherine first. The woman decided and put the test back in the package and then hid it in the pocket of her robe. And now, on her way home, she tried her best to hide her joy at finally becoming a mother. No matter how hard she tried to shift her focus to her stepdaughter's health, Amanda couldn't escape the thoughts of her future child. Boy or girl, she pondered. And how will they get along with Catherine? Won't she be jealous if she starts doing nasty things like she did to me? This is where Amanda started to get worried. And that's when she intercepted her stepdaughter's tense gaze in the rearview mirror. Amanda flinched. She was staring at her with unconcealed anger. The woman averted her eyes and gripped the steering wheel. She felt very scared. She had a premonition of something very bad. I found a suitable clinic for Catherine in Germany, John said a few days later. Now I will collect the money. The amount, of course, astronomical, more than 1,000,000 rubles. And this is only for the operation. And also rehabilitation. What's all this money for? Amanda was horrified. It includes not only surgery, but also tests, a consultation with an orthopedic traumatologist before the operation, and examination after the surgery. 3 days in the hospital, 6 days in a hotel. And transportation, pick up from the airport, take to the hospital, and then to the hotel. I see the woman sighed. At least afterward, when Catherine comes home, I'll be able to take care of her myself. I'm a nurse, so at least we'll save a little money. Why don't you want money from me? Catherine suddenly said rudely. There's plenty to spend it on. Amanda was taken aback. I just wanted to know what the money would be used for. So it's all inclusive, except for the food. That means there's money for that too. You're right, said John. I plan to borrow the whole amount from the director of my company and pay off part of her salary. John served the whole amount and made an appointment. The director agreed to give the money in a large advance, and John received it a few days later. I've never seen so much money, Amanda said as they spread the bills out on their bed to do an exact count. It should be enough for everything, both surgery and rehab. But I'll give you more if you need it, John said. Children are sacred. How do I tell him I'm pregnant? Amanda thought after he said that. Maybe I should wait until Catherine's surgery and then tell him the good news. They put the money in the nightstand in the bedroom and went to bed. In the morning, everyone went to work, leaving Catherine to pack. For the hospitalization, her grandmother Anne came over to help. All day Amanda was distracted. She barely worked her shift. Tired, she got in her car and drove home. The next day she felt worse, dizzy and nauseous. Could it be toxemia? Amanda thought. It's a little early. Maybe it's the age thing. I wouldn't drive today, in case she felt sick, so I'd call a cab. At work, she felt bad. She excused herself and went to see a gynecologist. Her eyes were blurry. Could Catherine have poisoned me with something? She had a terrible thought. No, she's not capable of serious harm. She can't do a little mischief, but she can't poison me. The doctor advised Amanda to drink plenty of water, to include fermented milk products and porridge in her diet, and prescribed magnesium and vitamin B6 supplements. Amanda drove home, wishing she could go to bed sooner. She felt weak and drowsy, but a nightmare awaited her at home. The money's gone. She was startled to see John at her doorstep. How? Catherine was home, and her grandmother Anne, who could have gotten in. They say they left to buy Catherine a backpack for the road. The old one was all worn out. But who could have known we had that kind of money at home? Only ours. Your principal. Amanda was thinking out loud. I'm shocked, to be honest, John admitted. We have to leave tomorrow. Everything's been arranged, and we don't have the money. Amanda went up to the second floor, went into the bedroom, and sat down on the bed at a loss. Her head was simply splitting. Her brain refused to recognize the reality of what was happening. She stared blankly at the nightstand where the money had been lying in the morning and didn't know how to comfort her husband. We found the money. She suddenly heard Anne's voice from downstairs. Amanda struggled to get up and walk downstairs. She was glad that the situation was resolved and wanted to know what had happened. She walked into the living room, and Anne said caustically, "Shame on you, thief." "What are you talking about?" Amanda asked, puzzled. "How could you steal money from a sick child?" Anne turned to her. "It's a good thing I thought to look in your car." "And we found the whole amount there," added Catherine, who was sitting next to her grandmother on the couch. John looked at his wife in silence with contempt. She did not know what to say, so absurd were these accusations. "She hid them in the trunk under a bag with some tools," said Anne. "I didn't expect that. You've lived together for so many years, and you?" "Why did you skip work today?" Catherine added. "We're thinking where to hide the money? Were you looking for a safety deposit box? Or did you want to give it to your lover, but you didn't have time to take it out?" "What is this nonsense?" Amanda finally found her voice. "And how do you know I wasn't at work? I called you to see if you had an extra backpack. I had a doctor's appointment." "You could have called my cell phone." "Why would you call my cell phone at work?" Catherine said, "I don't understand what you're thinking about money. You didn't plan any of this?" "That wasn't the plan." Anne interrupted her. "Maybe you planted it on me," suddenly realizing, turned to Catherine. "Amanda, nice setup. Very skillfully thought out this time. Slipping money into my car. It's not like putting pepper in my coffee. You're an asshole, not a human being." The woman suddenly burst into tears. "All these years we've been living, and you're ruining my life." So John roared, "Shut up," and he turned on his wife. "How dare you yell at my child, and a sick one at that? And how dare she accuse your wife of incomprehensible things?" Amanda parried. "Do you have some kind of double standard?" "Fuck you," suddenly bellowed her husband. "You can't touch my daughter, you infertile fool. I have you for her. Wanted to ruin her life. Disrupt the operation urgently. Are you out of your mind?" "I would never in my life have started," was Amanda, but no one was listening to her. "Get out," yelled John. "I don't want to see you. I'll file for divorce as soon as I get back from Germany. And I'll be damned if I leave you any property." 2 months later, Amanda sat in her dorm room and calculated how much money she had left before her paycheck. The amount was not encouraging. She had to keep buying vitamin supplements. Pregnancy was harder on her than expected. "And I don't have any savings," Amanda pondered. "And nothing to sell. John took everything from me. He signed the house over to himself in the divorce with his lefty lawyers in the car, and even the gifts he gave me. Over the years, all my inexpensive jewelry. Only her parents knew about her pregnancy. She didn't have time to tell John at first, and afterward she didn't want to. She was too hurt by the way her ex-husband had treated her. Maybe you should tell him. After all, Margaret's mother exhorted the woman. "I don't want to." The daughter shook her head negatively. "My child doesn't need a father who threw his mother out on the street after 6 years of living together without much of a trial. Take my grandmother on Dad's side of the family. She split up with her husband because of him, too. He cheated on her. So she went to her house in a remote village and did not let him on the doorstep when he came to repent. And after that he lived as a hermit. So she took offense at the whole world." "I remember that story, Mom. I only visited her a couple of times when I was a child, and after that she refused to accept everyone and got into herbs. She treated the locals, but for some reason she didn't want to know her family. Strange, isn't it? And her house is still intact. But no one goes there. When they buried her, they forgot the road. It's probably overgrown. But I'm not going to be a hermit, Amanda smiled. I have no grudges against the whole world, just one person. It was time for the first ultrasound. A few months ago, Amanda never imagined that she would have to go in for a checkup alone, without her loving husband, on such an important day. Her mom was back in town. She couldn't stay with her daughter. Amanda's father had had a stroke and the man needed to be cared for. So the baby is fine, the doctor who performed the ultrasound told Amanda. Do you want to know who it's going to be? Yes. Amanda opened her eyes in anticipation and smiled contentedly when she heard the answer. It had been a year. John had been working on his daughter's rehabilitation the whole time. The operation in Germany was successful, but the cast was not removed for a long time, and it took a long time to develop the leg after all this. However, despite all efforts, Mary limped, and her character from this did not improve at all. Why did fate do this to me, said the girl irritably to her father. I wanted to devote my life to sports. And what in the end? What am I to do now? To live and recover in time is how long has it been? Do you believe I'll miraculously heal and start skiing again? Look, but you can be more than just an athlete or a coach. There are different training programs, including for people with disabilities. What do you think I am? Handicapped? Catherine exclaimed with tears of anger in her eyes. No, that's not what I meant to say. John tried to calm his daughter. But she did not listen and went to her room. These conversations were happening more and more often, and they were devastating to the man. I was always on her side, he thought bitterly. So many years did not marry, took care of her feelings. Kicked the traitor Amanda out when I found out she was dirty. Now I live alone. Why doesn't she appreciate that? The young man was totally dependent on his daughter's whims. He reluctantly went home from work, because there he was waiting for a frowning-faced Catherine and her eternal dissatisfaction with complaints. He began to spend even more time on business trips, and in one of them met a nice woman, Amber. She worked as a waitress at the restaurant where he and his partners went for dinner. Where do you always go at night? After a month, my daughter suspected something was wrong. I go out with my friends. Not all I have to babysit you. John cut him off. In fact, he did not want to tell his daughter about his personal life, remembering her attitude to Amanda. The man offered Amber to move to his town, rented her an apartment the income allowed, and visited her several times a week. Amber accepted the status of secret lover. I don't care, she told her friend in a telephone conversation. Like a cheese and butter I roll around. I don't have to work. I make eyes at him. I chase his legs, and he, sweetheart, is ready for anything. She laughed. You're lucky, she sighed enviously. I would have to find someone to provide me with everything. Maybe we'll get married. Amber continued to brag. I've been hinting at him, working him up, but he's afraid to introduce me to his daughter. According to his story, she's a very spoiled, capricious girl. But good luck to you, wished her friend. At least call me to the wedding. I'm sure you'll get what you want. But the plans of calculating Amber was not destined to materialize. However, it was only her own fault she missed socializing. Sitting alone in her apartment 24 hours a day, she got herself a lover, 20-year-old Michael from the neighboring entrance, who was constantly looking at the poor woman, who went shopping at the grocery store in a provocative short dress and stilettos. One day she lured him with her finger into the entryway, and he obediently followed her. You are my goddess, whispered the enchanted young man, lying in bed after his lovemaking. His admiration pleased her ego but let her guard down. One day she was kissing a young lover in the street near her driveway and didn't notice John pulling up in his car. He got out of the car and stood silently watching Amber and Michael embrace. Young man, he finally said snidely. Let me help you pack up your beauty's things and take them outside. She's moving in with you now, I suppose. Amber and Michael looked away from each other, stunned. The woman realized it was pointless to make excuses in such a situation and, sighing, went to her entryway to say goodbye to her apartment and to pack up her belongings. What a fool, she thought frustratedly. Now to return home with nothing to eat. Emberochka, really move in with me, Michael said, catching up with her on the stairs. Are you stupid? She answered rudely, opening the apartment. Milk on your lips has not dried up, and you're already climbing up skirts? Get out. And slammed the door in his face. The confused guy with the eyes of a hurt kitten remained standing in the stairwell, but Amber didn't care about him anymore. God, who have I messed with? John pondered as he walked home. It's from loneliness, apparently not recognizing a woman of easy virtue, he began to feel very sorry for himself. It felt like he was paying the price. But by an effort of will, the man restrained himself. At home, he was waiting for the second part of the play, which could be called a comedy of situations. But it was not a comedy, but a tragedy. Catherine met her father with hysterics. I want to go to the sea, she declared, suddenly entering the living room, where the man sat down to rest from emotion. Catherine is tired of sitting at home and going to doctors. Daughter, it is necessary to heal. Something cranky. We'll go on vacation in a couple of months, I promise. Why not now? I'm tired. I want to swim. It's good for my leg. Let's go this week, she demanded of her father. Stop it, John shouted at her, his nerves finally giving out. First the mistress surprised him, then the daughter made demands. Why are you yelling at me? Why are you acting like a little kid? You're an adult, but you're only doing things. You're sassing me. What do you want? You don't like me. Maybe your new baby will be better. Is that what you're counting on? What baby, for God's sake? John waved her away. I'm not having any kids. If you found out about Amber somehow, don't worry, I broke up with her. Amber? Who the hell is Amber? I meant your Amanda. Did she have an abortion or something? I don't get it, John frowned. Why are you bringing her up? And what does that have to do with the abortion? But she should have been in labor by now. Didn't you even ask if you had a son or a daughter? She was pregnant when she left here. It finally came to John. I didn't know about it. How did you know? I found a 2-stripe pregnancy test in her robe. She obviously didn't put someone else's in there. Oh my God. So you really did go through her stuff all the time, just like she said. And I was a fool not to believe it. Yes, Catherine smirked. I got rid of her beautifully, didn't I? Our plan was a success. John silently looked at the monster, in which he could not recognize his daughter, and with horror waited for the continuation, although he was beginning to guess what she means. Grandma Ann helped me, the girl said. As soon as I found this test, I realized that you would soon abandon me. New wife, new offspring. Her tone became dismissive when it came to the baby. So I got my grandmother to help me plant money for my stepmother. I could barely walk on my own. How could you? John exhaled in shock. Grandmother broke quickly, boasted Catherine. She has no one but me. She was already worried about me. And then I frightened her that you'll start a new family. You'd dump me, an invalid, on her. So it's about money. It turns out, looked at Catherine father. In general, yes, she shamelessly confirmed. The man got up, left the living room and went to the second floor, not seeing the road. He came to his senses when he hit his toes on the banister, as if in a fog. Climbing the stairs, he went into his office, where there was a small bar, took out a bottle of cognac, a glass, sat down at his desk, and began to get methodically drunk. After a couple hours staggering, he went downstairs and hailed a cab. Get me Amanda, who recently moved in, he demanded of the janitor at the hostel where his wife had lived before their marriage. Amanda who? Go sleep it off, she scolded. I'll call the police. Nurse Amanda. She was supposed to move in here a year ago. I know exactly who you're talking about. She moved out before she gave birth. Bought herself a house. A house? John was surprised. Where did she get the money? You mean her ex-husband? The one who kicked her pregnant and penniless out of the house. She earned the money for the house. It was a very interesting story when she was 6 months pregnant. Amanda had lost her spirit. She went to work, returned to her dormitory in utter despondency. Didn't know where she was going to get the money to support her child. Her parents could not help. The father needed expensive medicines and physiotherapy. The woman didn't even think about returning to her hometown and creating additional expenses for her mother, for herself, and the child. Can't do this anymore, she thought, as Emily lay in her one room on an uncomfortably narrow bunk that made her back ache. I need a distraction, somewhere to get out so I don't spend a lot of money. And then the conversation with her mother about her reclusive grandmother popped into her head. Amanda was revitalized. It would be possible to go to that abandoned cottage, to walk away from the noisy city, to breathe the forest air. And in a few minutes she was on her way. The cabin was only 30 kilometers from the city. You could get to the nearest village by electric train, and then you had to walk a couple of kilometers through the forest. How overgrown is everything here, marveled the woman when she reached the place. And here my grandmother had medicinal herbs and a vegetable garden. She stepped inside the cabin. The shriveled door was unlocked. Inside was old furniture covered in dust. Amanda found a stool, laid a cellophane bag she had with her on it, and sat down to rest from the road. She was in a strange mood. How nice to go back to childhood for a little while, she thought. And how sad that I'm as lonely as my grandmother was. And then the woman's gaze fell on a puffy Soviet-era stationery book lying on a table nearby. She reached out, picked it up, and dust kicked up into the air. The recipes were written in the book in chemical pencil. I didn't know Grandma was into self-medication, Amanda marveled. She opened the book, and there were recipes for healing ointments and other remedies her grandmother had made. There were a good 100 of them, if not more. Leafing through the book, Amanda noticed a section called back pain. Interesting to try this, she thought. My back is hurting more and more every month. Late in the pregnancy, it's scary to think what will happen. I'll take this tome with me. At home, she prepared the ointment, having bought at the pharmacy those herbs that were in the recipe, and Vaseline as a base, tried to apply it to herself. And oh miracle! After 2 days, the pain in her back went away. The interested woman decided to try other recipes. Okay, let's try a hair mask. Amanda thought she was stressed because of her pregnancy and it caused a dull complexion. She decided to try the face mask because her skin looked terrible. The effect surprised not only her but also her co-workers. After a month, her skin was soft and her hair was smooth and shiny. Women at work flooded her with questions about what miracle remedy she was using. Amanda made them each a jar of her concoctions but didn't reveal the recipe. Word spread quickly, and soon she had a line of people lined up to receive the healing substances. We need to get someone to help, Amanda decided, and offered the job to the woman who lived closest to her. The same janitor who was now telling the story to John. I mostly just sit here, the older woman told the man. There's nothing to do at night, so I used to work part-time for your wife. And then she started selling goods through social media. It went well, and she moved into a small shop, opened it up and hired full-time help. John froze as he learned of his wife's fate. He had thought her a conniving liar until now, but it turned out that she was a capable businesswoman who started her own business without anyone's help. The child she gave birth, he inquired quietly. Yes, I can give you the address. You can talk to her yourself, the woman relented. Even though you have rattled her nerves. She was very fond of you at the time. John took the slip of paper with the address and thanked the woman profusely. Though he wanted to run to Amanda, he held back and went home, deciding he needed to get some sleep, sober up, and get himself back to normal. The next morning he showered, shaved, drank a few cups of coffee, and drove his car to his ex-wife's house. The closer he got to her house, the more nervous he became. What will she say to me? How will she take it? He pondered. If I were her, I'd probably spit in her face. He drove up to the right house, hidden by a tall green fence, got out of the car and knocked on the gate. After a while it swung open. Amanda looked up at him with the baby in her arms. John stood silent, unable to find the right words. Come in, the woman said, moving aside and letting him pass. I just found out about everything. About the pregnancy, John pronounced, waiting for her to close the wicket. She looked at him carefully and nodded toward the open door. Come inside. I'll give you tea. I had no desire to inform you after everything that's happened, Amanda said calmly as she walked into the kitchen. Sit down, I'll put the kettle on now. And how is Catherine? Has she recovered? Not so good. 1 minute she's better, the next she's worse. Moody. Behavior is atrocious because of it. I'm not surprised, Amanda smiled, rocking the baby who flinched at the sound of the kettle boiling. She wasn't an angel in the good times either. But whatever she thought, I treated her well and worried about her health. And she did such an ungrateful thing. She confessed everything John said it was her and Anne who set you up. What was the point of that? Why so jealous of me and the baby? Amanda sighed. And that's him. You said baby, so is it a boy? A boy, the woman blurted out in a smile as she looked at her son. We're 4 months old soon. What did you name him? John held out his hands and Amanda gently handed the baby to him. Stepan Jonovich. Sound good. Tears came to the man's eyes. Sweetheart, can you forgive me? I was not myself because of my daughter's illness. I snapped at you. I believed everything. You know, with the baby coming, I've begun to understand you better, Amanda replied. I don't know how I would have coped if Stepashka had gotten sick. How would I have behaved? So you can forgive me, John repeated. The most important question for him right now. Amanda answered it. We'll see. 6 months later, they celebrated a birthday. The baby was a year old. There were few guests, only the closest ones. Amanda's parents came. Her father got better and was able to endure the road. Also present were John's father and Catherine and her grandmother. I can't help but admire your kindness, John whispered to Amanda, taking a moment when they were alone in the kitchen preparing to bring out the desserts for the holiday table. You've forgiven Catherine and her grandmother. I think they've realized what they've done and are truly remorseful. What's the big deal? Holding a grudge for the rest of your life. Especially now. After all, it was lucky to have such a sister as Catherine became. John smiled. Yes, she really cares for him. Who would have thought it? She's forgotten about sports. She wants to be a teacher. God grant us all wishes, said Amanda. I already have all my wishes, the man replied. I have a real strong family. All my loved ones are with me every day. They hugged each other and looked into the living room, where at the same table were gathered people who had made mistakes and were eager to correct them, who were angry with despair but found the strength to overcome themselves and rejoice in the changes, who fought with illnesses but inspired others with their kindness, and of course, who knew how to forgive their loved ones. After all, family is the most important, the most valuable thing in our lives. Voices could be heard outside the open kitchen door. AA was quietly coming down the stairs. When she woke up, she was thirsty. The woman was surprised to find that her husband was not in bed with her. The clock showed the 3rd hour of the night. Where could he have gone at such a time? She thought. There was always a jug of clean water on the table next to the bed, but yesterday she forgot to fill it. We'll have to go down to the kitchen. Alien slipped her feet into her slippers and went out into the hallway. Walking down the stairs of their big house, she realized that George was in the kitchen and talking quietly with his mother about something. Her mother-in-law lived with them, but before Alien did not notice that her husband and mother-in-law liked to chat at night. She went quietly to the door. You should have left her a long time ago. Her mother-in-law's voice sounded like the hiss of a cobra. Mom, stop it. I love Alien, George spoke in a whisper. But even with the door ajar, you could hear that he was annoyed. You don't understand, son. I'm taking care of you. I told you right away, don't marry that fool. With your money, with your position, you could have found a better wife. From a normal family. No, Mom. I hate to hear that. George even raised his voice a little. If you remember when I married Alien, I didn't have any position. Well, I'm sorry. At least I raised you all my life. Put my whole soul into you, worked 2 jobs to give you a decent education so that you could choose a better path in life. Thank you. The best thank you for me is my grandson. And you're depriving me of the opportunity to be a grandmother. Mom, you know, Alien and I have tried to have a child many times, but ... In general, if you don't talk to her yourself, file for divorce and kick her out of the house. I will tell Alien everything myself. I will tell you that you have another family." Her mother-in-law's voice sounded resolute, but Alien didn't pay attention to it now. She only heard one thing: another family, another family, another family. The woman almost screamed, her mouth hanging open. She turned around and ran up the stairs to the bedroom. What she heard that night was a terrible discovery for her. If what Anne says is true, then it turns out that George is deceiving her. And how many years does it last? How long has he been living with two families? No, it was impossible to believe it. From the first day they met, they loved and cared for each other. And my husband never even offended Alien with a word. Hundreds of small hammers were pounding in his temples. Alien really wanted to wake up. She wanted it all to be some kind of stupid dream, a nightmare that would disappear as soon as she opened her eyes. But it wasn't a dream. She heard her mother-in-law talking to her husband about George having another family. This can't be happening. 10 years ago, Alien and George met at a party, where the girl was invited by her friend Jane. They studied at hairdressing courses together and have already interned at one of the beauty salons. It turned out that her boyfriend's friend, the same George, was throwing a birthday party. It was there that the young people saw each other for the first time. But before that, Jane had been trying to persuade her friend to go to the party for a very long time. "There's nothing for me to wear there," sighed Alien. "Oh, that's not a problem," Jane smiled, opening the closet. Jane began to take out hangers with dresses, blouses, and skirts from the closet. "Choose what you want and can. Then don't even return it," she suggested. "Try on the one that suits you best," Jane said, applying the dress to the alien. "And this turquoise one with sand will be good for you," Jane claimed, helping her friend try on a dress. "Oh, what are you? I hardly wear them," Alien objected, looking at the white high-heeled shoes. "Put it on," insisted Jane, putting the shoes in front of her friend. "You look great, Alien," Alex said, looking at the girl through the rearview mirror. "I can't wait to drink champagne and dance," Jane supported him. "Well, will we make it?" Jane was indignant as they drove down the street. Alex, the leading car. "Calm down, of course we'll make it, girls." Alien drove and looked out the window at the quiet night area and the lanterns illuminating the dark streets, thinking about how beautiful the city is at night. What awaits her at this party? She didn't know, so she was worried. After taking the elevator to the 10th floor, they immediately heard loud music and cheerful voices. Alex rang the bell next to the front door. No one opened it. "It's no use. No one will hear the bell," he said, and pulled the door. It turned out to be open. The trio entered the hallway, and Alien realized that she found herself in some other world unknown to her. It was a very large apartment, well furnished with expensive furniture. Colored lights ran across the ceiling in the living room, and girls and boys danced under them. Noticing the guests, the tall, stately host of the party rushed to them. Finally, the birthday boy hugged his friend. "I thought you weren't coming," Dottie greeted Jane, and she pushed Alien forward. "Let's get acquainted. George. This is an alien. She's my best friend. That's the kind of girl." Jane gave a thumbs up. "Very nice," said the guy, holding out his hand. "I'm George. Come on in, join us. Don't be shy about anything or anyone. In general, open up, guys." Alien noted that the audience at this party is very interesting. The girls in beautiful outfits behaved confidently and easily. They danced and had fun. They were not shy of anyone. The guys supported the girls. There were plates of snacks on the table and even on the windowsills. There were bottles of wine and stronger drinks everywhere. Jane and Alex left Alien, rushing to their friends. They knew almost everyone here. And Alien felt awkward. Suddenly, someone handed her a glass. "Will you have a drink?" It was George. The girl took the glass in her hands. In general, she rarely drank, but then, apparently out of excitement, she drank wine. It tasted good, moderately sweet, and fruity. "I see you're bored. Why aren't you dancing?" the birthday boy asked. "It's a little awkward." "I don't know anyone here," Alien replied timidly. Do you want me to introduce you? Don't. Inconvenient. But then look. This girl with long hair is Helen. We study together. My childhood friend eats something there all the time. We went to the same kindergarten, can you imagine? And we're still friends. Friends are sitting on the couch and girls are lighting up there. Do you remember? Alien nodded, although she still couldn't remember all the names at once. Don't be shy. We have a good company, all our own. George served her a canapé with cheese and olives. I'll try. Can I go out on the balcony to get some air? The girl asked. Of course. It's really stuffy in here. He led the alien to a large loggia. From the 10th floor of the high-rise building, there was a wonderful view of the city, shining with lights. A light wind blew, bringing a breath of fresh air. The wine was slightly dizzying. Slow music came from the room. Come on, let's dance. George extended his hand to the alien. The girl turned around and saw that Jane and Alex were dancing, clinging to each other. For some reason, she also wanted to dance. George turned out to be a gallant, strong guy. He moved very well. Dancing with him, Alien felt more confident among unfamiliar guys. Where do you study? The guy asked. At a hairdressing course, replied Alien. Will you make people beautiful? Something like that. Since childhood, Alien wanted to work in a barber shop like her mother. Therefore, after graduation from the orphanage, there was no choice for her. And you? I'm in my 5th year, George replied, smiling. I'll be a journalist. All my life I have dreamed of traveling around the country and showing people what is happening in different regions. I want to work in the news. Great. It's a great profession. Alien supported him. You're no worse off. George smiled even wider. Can you imagine if there were no hairdressers, how terrible the correspondents would look on TV? They laughed. Alien has become so easy with this simple and very attractive guy. After a few hours, the guys began to disperse. Alex called a taxi, leaving his car near George's house. Saying goodbye, the birthday boy asked Aliona for a phone number. Can I call you sometime? He asked. Call me. Alien smiled. She was very tired, but she was glad that her friend was able to persuade her to go to visit. In the taxi, smiling mysteriously, Jane looked at the alien. But George liked you. She poked her friend lightly in the side. I haven't left your side all evening. Stop it. Just a very polite and hospitable host. Alien lowered her eyes because she liked this guy herself. Oh, a hospitable host. If you want to know, he is also one of the best students in the course, and an enviable groom. By the way, Alex, confirm my words. Aha, an enviable groom without a bride. The guy laughed. And this case is fixable. Jane persisted. Let us take our alien and marry him off. Oh, that's enough already. There's my house. The girl pointed to her 5-story building to the driver. The friends said goodbye, and Alien headed for the entrance. She was terribly sleepy. I didn't even have the strength to take a shower. The girl changed her clothes and collapsed on the sofa. Drowning with her head in a soft pillow, Alien slept almost until lunch. When she opened her eyes, the afternoon sun was shining through the curtains. The girl stretched and went to the bathroom. Today she had to go to the courses in the evening, and also have time to buy groceries and cook food. There's almost nothing in the fridge at all. Entering the kitchen, she put the kettle on and took a can of coffee out of the cupboard. It was empty. Coffee would be nice now, but I'll have to drink tea. Alien thought. A phone trilled from the room. Hello, the girl replied. Hello, this is George. So I decided to call you to find out how you're doing. How are you feeling? Hi, it's all good. For some reason, Aliona's heart began to beat faster. Let's meet tonight, go out somewhere? The guy suggested. I have a course tonight. That's it. It's agreed. I'll meet you. After the course, the address was sent. Alien did not have time to come to her senses, did not have time to answer something. began to doubt, and George had already said goodbye and hung up. She was standing by the window and did not even notice how a smile was opening on her face. She really wanted to see this confident, grown-up, strong guy again. The girl hardly waited for the end of classes. George was waiting for her at the entrance. She had noticed his figure in the window a long time ago. "Hello," she said, and her heart began to beat very hard. "Hello." He held out his hand to her. "Come on." "Where to?" "I know a good place here. Let's sit down and have a bite. You must be hungry, right?" George was smiling with such a charming smile that the girl couldn't resist. Alien really didn't mind eating something right now. She didn't have time to go shopping. The small cafe with only a few tables was calm and quiet. A few customers were talking quietly, drinking coffee. The soft, calm music was relaxing. "Order whatever you want," the guy suggested when the waitress brought the menu. "And what will you do?" Alien asked. "I see. You're shy." George understood her question in his own way. "Well, then I'll make the order myself. You don't mind?" "Okay." The young man ordered a salad, roast, and dessert for himself and the alien. Watching her eat, George smiled. "I am so pleased that you agreed to meet with me," he said when they had finished dinner and were drinking coffee. "It's strange, it feels like I've known you for many years. And we often sit like this in a cafe," replied Alien. "But I don't really know anything about you at all." "What should I tell you? I was born in this city. I've lived here all my life. My mother raised me alone. Since childhood, she has instilled in me that the subject of my father is taboo. So even before school, I stopped asking her who my dad was. My mother had a hard time alone, but she did everything so that I didn't need anything. I am very grateful to her for that." "And who is your mother?" Alien asked. "Now she has her own publishing agency." "Oh, I see why you want to become a journalist." "I'm already working. My mother often gives me orders for publications so that I have my own money. It teaches you to work, so to speak. I've been writing for her publishing house since the 3rd year." Their cups had been empty for a long time, and there were no people in the cafe anymore. "Shall we go?" George suggested. They went outside. The warm May breeze was blowing Alina's hair. They walked along the square, enjoying each other's company. She didn't want to go home at all. The girl's soul has not had such calmness and a sense of security for a long time. "Well, will you tell me about yourself?" George asked. Alien was silent. She didn't know what to tell this confident guy who had everything going so well in his life. He was lucky. At least he had a mother who probably just adores her son, cares about him, loves him with all her soul. Alien couldn't boast of that. In her life, everything was exactly the opposite. That's how the world works. Fate is not kind to everyone. She has been singling out someone since childhood, and there is no explanation why this is happening. "My mother was a hairdresser," the girl began to tell about herself. "Well, then I also understand why you chose this profession. Did you follow in your mom's footsteps?" "Yes, she has been gone for many years. She died." "I'm sorry. And the father?" Alien didn't want to continue this topic at all. She had long ago taught herself not to remember her childhood. Her father drank, sometimes raised his hand against her mother, but she loved him very much. Despite her young age, the girl still remembered some of the scenes that frightened her as a child. She was forced to huddle in a corner, hide behind a closet or under a table. One day he got drunk, and a man died in a fight because of him. That's how he ended up in prison. He died of grief there. The mother has now started drinking alcohol. She often left her 5-year-old daughter alone at home for a few days, going on a spree. The woman was kicked out of work. At the barber shop, her hands often shook, and customers complained about the smell of fumes. Seeing all this, the neighbors called the Social Security staff, and after a while the mother was deprived of parental rights. After that, the mother was completely drunk. From a beautiful, blooming, and always well-groomed woman, she turned into a monster. The booze ruined her, and one day the neighbors found the girl's mother dead in her apartment. The grandmother took custody of the girl and took her to herself. But by the time Alien had to go to first grade, Grandma died of a heart attack. That's how Alien got into an orphanage. The girl did not want to tell all this to a guy who was doing well in his life and who liked her so much. Other people's problems and failures, even if they do not depend on us, are not needed by anyone. So she kept quiet for a bit and decided to lie. I never knew him either. I see. You and I are friends in misfortune, it turns out. George wanted to defuse the situation. He saw that the conversation he started went in the wrong direction, made Alien sad, and he didn't want to spoil the evening. But the girl was already immersed in the memories that she had so diligently banished from her head. She was almost good at it. Only George brought her back to the past. 2 years ago, she left the orphanage. The girl was lucky. Very quickly she was given an apartment, like an orphan. Some savings in the account helped the girl at first, and everything seemed to be fine. But something happened that made her look at the world with different eyes and realize that it was not as kind and warm as the one in which she lived. She was raised in an orphanage. There, educators took care of her and other children, taught them how to live, helped, listened, and pitied them. One day, returning home late at night from a part-time job, she ran into a group of guys. They started molesting the girl. There was no one nearby. These three attacked the alien. She couldn't even make a sound out of fear. The horror of that evening haunted her for several weeks, until she realized that she was pregnant. She made an interruption. She did not want to raise a child without knowing who his father was. Jane's friend, whom she had already befriended, helped organize everything. I found a doctor who would agree to do everything quickly, without additional examinations, collecting certificates and passing tests. If it wasn't for Jane, she would have gone crazy. The friend was the only person who knew about this terrible incident. "Have I offended you in some way?" George asked, noticing that the girl had withdrawn into herself. "Are you thinking about something?" "I'm just really tired." "I'm sorry," said Alien. They had already reached her entrance. The stars were shining in the sky. The barely opened leaves on the trees glistened softly in the light breeze. George took Alien's hands, turned her towards him, and looked intently into her eyes. How fluffy her eyelashes are, he thought. "I really don't want to part with you." The guy said quietly, "Let's go out of town for the weekend and have a little picnic. I'll take my mom's car, we'll go for a ride. I promise you won't regret it. I know such a wonderful place where no sad thoughts can come to mind." "I'll think about it," Alien replied. "I have to go." "Yes, of course. I will hope to see you again." He wanted to kiss her on the cheek, but the girl had already turned around and walked to the door. That night, Alien fell asleep with mixed feelings in her soul. On the one hand, she liked George so much, she had never experienced anything like this before. A strange excitement enveloped her in a soft veil. But the fact that he had stirred up the most unpleasant memories in her overshadowed all the pleasant moments of the evening. Life was unfair to her. But Alien has long since come to terms with this and tried to live independently so that someone from above would see that she was worthy of happiness. She will do everything for this. The morning began with a loud doorbell. She woke up, looked at her watch. 9:30 in the morning. Who was brought in so early? Slipping her feet into her slippers, she went into the hallway and opened the door. Jane appeared on the threshold. "Are you still asleep?" The friend flew into the apartment with lightning speed, kicked off her high-heeled shoes and proceeded to the kitchen. The girl followed her, rubbing her eyes. "Is that how you can sleep when I have such news for you?" "What's the news?" "Coffee first, I really want to cheer up." Jane has already opened the closet and took out the still unopened jar that Galen bought the day before when she went to the grocery store. "What are you standing for? Put the kettle on." "Why are you so excited?" From the powerful energy of her friend, Alien woke up to the end. She filled the kettle with water, put it on the stove, and turned on the gas. "Late last night, the owner of the salon called me and said that she was taking you and me to work. Think about it, something happened there. One of the masters mixed up the compositions and the oxidizer and dyed her hair blue. There was such a scandal. In short, this creative was fired right away, and the hostess called me." "Come on." Alien was surprised that such a layman could work in the salon. "Yes, and I called you right away, but you didn't answer the phone, and then you became unavailable at all." By the way, your phone is out of range right now. Jane cut off a piece of sausage in a masterly way and was preparing to start breakfast. Anyway, get ready. We have to be in the salon by 11 o'clock. Can you imagine? Now you and I have a permanent job. Where were you yesterday? Why didn't you answer? Jane shouted loudly so that the alien could hear. I was walking. The answer came from the bathroom. Jane would not have been surprised by her friend's response if she had said that she had been sleeping or reading, or at the very least watching the series. But for Alien to walk, and even so late. The girl still remembered that terrible incident and knew that Alien tries not to go alone in the evenings. Her friend's answer put her in a stupor, so she wasn't walking alone. When she came out of the bathroom, Jane was already all turned on with curiosity. Well, who were we walking with? What is it? She asked, smiling slyly. With George. Alien simply replied. Yes, did he ask you out? What date? Come on. We just went for a walk, sat in a cafe. Then he walked me home. Alien's cheeks suddenly turned pink. I'm happy for you, girlfriend. George is a great guy. And it's great that he liked you so much that he invited you for a walk the very next day after meeting you. And you didn't want to go to the party yet. It doesn't mean anything, Alien insisted. We just went for a walk. Okay, just so simple. It was not in Jane's rules to pry into other people's personal affairs. Come on, get ready. From that day on, Alien's life began to change for the better. The hostess of the beauty salon, where they had been interning all this time, greeted the girls quite affably. She showed them their workplace. The girls still had one for two. They had to work in shifts, but it suited them. Alien is completely immersed in her work. She was fascinated by everything that happened in the salon and liked it when the clients left happy, refreshed, rejuvenated. The magic of hairdressing fascinated her. Here comes a lady who is well over 50, and after half an hour no one will give her that age. A new hairstyle, a beautiful hair color without a hint of gray, styling that suits her very well. The client is happy. Alien is proud of its work. Carried away, she almost completely forgot about Igor, but he called on Friday night. Hi, have you considered my offer to go on a picnic? Alien was taken by surprise by this call. She wanted to see the man again, next to whom her heart began to beat faster. I work until lunch on Saturday, she replied hesitantly. It's okay, we'll go after lunch. The guy said confidently. Agreed? Okay. Alien agreed. I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock dot. Okay, yes, I'll be waiting. She hung up the phone and wondered if she was in too much of a hurry, going alone with a guy out of town, where there would be no one else. She liked George, but the negative experience of communicating with guys was alarming. She pushed bad thoughts away from herself, persuaded that everything would be fine. George just couldn't hurt her. He is decent, intelligent, educated, well-mannered. She was not mistaken and did not regret for a minute that she went on a picnic with George. He picked her up, as promised. They raced along a country highway, enjoying the wind spinning in the car, through the open windows and the music playing from the radio. Alien admired the beautiful landscapes flashing by the window, and George looked at her and smiled. He brought her to the shore of a small lake. How do you like the place? What is it? He asked, opening the trunk of the car to get groceries and a folding barbecue. It's very beautiful. It's amazing. I'm glad you like it. George handed Alien a basket of fruits and vegetables, and he took care of the meat. In general, it will be very crowded here in the summer. While the bathing season has not started, you can count on privacy. And I can't swim at all. They didn't teach this in our orphanage, said Alien. They taught me a lot of things, but they didn't teach me to swim. What's the problem? Do you want me to teach you? Well, when summer comes, of course. George laughed. I don't know. The girl was slicing tomatoes and cucumbers with might and main, laying out apples on plastic plates. In between, she watched George masterfully cook meat on coals and enjoyed the aroma of an almost finished barbecue. It was a wonderful day. They had a great time, enjoyed delicious food, listened to music, laughed, and just talked about different topics. George no longer touched on the topic of the past. She felt at ease and comfortable with him. At some point, the guy thought about it and looked at Alien carefully. "You know, when you came to the party that night, I just couldn't take my eyes off you," he said softly. "You are special, not like the girls from my department, like childhood friends, like those around me." Alien was silent, not knowing what to say to such a revelation of the guy. "I want you to be my girlfriend. I want to get to know you better every day, be there for you, help and protect you." Goosebumps ran down Aliona's body. I have never said such words before. The girl was pleased, but she did not know what to answer in such cases, so she continued to remain silent. "Don't you like me?" George asked, looking into her blue eyes. "I like you," Alien replied softly. "But are you sure you need someone like me? You have an education, a nice apartment, Mom, after all. And I'm just a hairdresser." "It doesn't matter at all. I'm sure you're going to be very good. And don't worry about Mom. She'll like you, I'm sure. I think you're in a hurry. We don't know each other at all." Alien picked a blade of grass and fiddled with it in her hands. "Don't worry, I won't rush you. I just want us to be together. I just want to see you more often." "I agree. Let's meet up. And sometimes spend time together." They smiled at each other. The situation lightened up by itself. George brought the alien home when it was already dark outside. Without knowing why, she was in no hurry to get out of the car. She was pleased to be with him. She did not want to part at all. George looked at her and was silent. And then he took my hand, brought his face closer and kissed me. When she opened her eyes, he was looking at her and smiling. "See you later." He should have said goodbye, but he still wouldn't let go of her hand. "Yes, see you," Alien said softly. After going up to the apartment, she sat down on the sofa and closed her eyes. There was a viscous silence in the room. I didn't want to turn on the TV or even the light. The girl felt George's kiss on her lips over and over again, and some kind of unrestrained, soft, warm happiness filled her from the inside. It's been 6 months. George defended his diploma and worked at his mother's publishing house. During this time, the girl managed to get regular customers in the beauty salon who wanted only her to serve them. The hostess often praised the girl. "You have a talent, Alien," she said. "It's not for nothing that you have such a record." "I'm glad I didn't make a mistake about you." George and Alien called each other every day. Whenever possible, we met, spent evenings together, went to cafes, went to the cinema, just walked. The guy, as promised, did not rush the alien. There was no intimacy between them during this time, only kisses and hugs. One day they settled comfortably in a cafe on the embankment, choosing a table by the window. It was drizzling outside, nailing the yellowed foliage to the asphalt, and the wind was trying hard to disperse the damp leaves. "You know," George said, holding the girl's hand, "I want you to meet my mom. I think it's time. I love you, and anyway, tomorrow I'm inviting you to dinner with us." "Does your mom know about me?" the girl asked. "She knows I have a girlfriend, but that's all. So I want you to get to know each other, and our relationship has moved to another level." "What do you mean?" "I want you to be able to come to our house as my beloved girl. I want everyone to know that we are together, that I have you and you have me." "I'm afraid your mom won't like me. "Don't worry about it. She will accept any choice I make. Mom loves me and will be happy if I'm happy." Alien nodded silently. But she was not completely sure that they were doing everything right. However, she hoped that everything would go well, and decided that she would definitely prepare properly for this meeting. Alien knew who would help and support her. When she got home, the first thing she did was call Jane. "Can you come?" she asked her friend. "Right now? Something happened?" "Yes, it happened. Please come." Alien knew that Jane would come rushing at the first call. You don't need to explain anything to her over the phone. Half an hour later, a friend was already ringing the doorbell. "I saw you at work today. What could have happened in a few hours?" Jane asked, walking into the kitchen. "Will you make coffee?" "Yes, I'll put the kettle on now." Alien took out the cups. What happened is that George wants to introduce me to his mother tomorrow. Come on. Jane knew, of course, that Alien and George were dating, that they were both in love. She also knew that apart from kissing, there was nothing between them. Therefore, I treated this relationship more like a platonic one. So I was surprised that George was already taking Alien to his home to introduce him to his mother. Usually it's not like that for couples. They sleep together a couple of times. If everything remains the same, introduce them to their parents, or even go to get acquainted when a pregnancy test shows 2 stripes. And here everything is somehow childish, and they are already going to bow to their mother. Yes, today he told me that tomorrow we are going to have dinner at their house. I'm really worried, Jane. What if she doesn't like me? Oh my God. Do you want to live with her or something? I already thought something incredible had happened to you. And then, just think, sit at the table, eat something homemade. You get different questions. This is usually the case. That's what I'm afraid of. What am I going to tell about myself? That my father was a criminal, my mother got drunk, and I grew up in an orphanage. She put her palms to her eyes, rubbing them to calm her pulse. Don't tell me that. Get off the subject or say you're dead. Usually after such an answer, tactful people do not ask how it happened. Well, that's a lie. Alien objected. You can't start a relationship with a lie. And George, didn't you lie about your parents? Jane asked. I wasn't lying, I just didn't say anything. He saw that this topic was upsetting me and did not touch it again. So don't tell his mother either. Jane hugged her friend by the shoulders and worries. And so everything will be fine. Don't you understand? It's rude not to answer questions. Alien, pull yourself together. You better think about what you will appear in front of your mother, advised a friend. It's true, the girl agreed. His mother is probably such an elegant lady, owns a publishing house, drives a car, and what a luxurious apartment they have. You know that. That's exactly why you have to be in all your glory. Come on, let's see what's in your closet that's decent. The girls went into the room. Jane opened the closet door in a masterly way and critically examined her friend's wardrobe one by one. Hangers with dresses and skirts flew onto the sofa. Listen, put on this knitted dress. A friend held out a hanger with a blue monochrome dress. Firstly, according to the weather. Secondly, nothing flashy. You will look quite decent. Do you think? Of course, it's better to pay attention to the appearance. Make light makeup and you can curl the hair at the tips. That's all. Jane seemed very pleased with herself. As always, she helped her friend solve the problem and was proud of it. Come on, you'll worry when we choose a wedding dress, laughed Jane. Come on, you're kidding. And what if he goes to introduce his mother? Then he wants to introduce her as a bride. It's like you came from another world. All guys do that. No, we haven't even had that yet. Alien spoke softly. And you didn't have that, as you say, just because you don't want to. George would have been glad for a long time. I'm sure of it. Jane, stop making me blush. She waved her friend away, pressed her cool palms to her hot cheeks. On the one hand, the girl was grateful to her friend for her support, but on the other, Jane's outspoken statements drove her crazy every time, put her into a stupor, made her blush. Nevertheless, she agreed with the advice about the dress, put it aside, and put the rest of the clothes back in the closet. The girls went into the hallway. That's it. I ran, Jane said, giving her friend a peck on the cheek. Tell me later how it went. Of course, what are you talking about? Who else am I going to tell? Alien closed the door behind her friend and looked at herself in the mirror. Still, George shouldn't have come up with this introduction to Mom, she thought. Had it been bad for the two of them all these months? After seeing the alien home, George drove home. Opening the apartment door, he shouted loudly. Mom, I'm at home. I'm in the kitchen, son. Go to dinner, Anne replied. You're hungry as a beast. The guy sat down at the table, and his mother put a plate of fried potatoes and sausages in front of him. But tomorrow you still have to cook a normal dinner with everything that should be on the table, the guy declared. Yes, and what kind of holiday is tomorrow? Anne asked, sitting down opposite her son and pouring him tea. "And tomorrow, Mom, I'll introduce you to my girlfriend," George said solemnly. Unexpectedly, Mom smiled, propping her chin on her hand and leaning on the table. "Nothing unexpected. We've been dating for 6 months now," George said. "Give me the bread, please." The woman handed her son a plate with sliced bread. She took a deep breath. Anne knew that George was dating someone. He often talked on the phone with some girl. In addition, she could not help but notice that her son was simply glowing with happiness, did not stay at work too long, and came home late. She did not ask George about his personal life. "I knew he would tell me everything himself when the time came. And now, apparently, that time has come. Once I decided to introduce her to my girlfriend, so it's very serious." "Can you tell me a little bit who she is?" Mother asked, so that I would at least know what to talk about with her. "She's just a wonderful girl." George Ann interrupted. "That's enough." The guy wiped his mouth with a napkin and got up from the table. Anne didn't like her son's answer. The smile quickly disappeared from her face. "Mom, I hope there won't be any sausages on the table tomorrow. Cook everything beautifully and deliciously, as you know how," George asked. "I have absolutely no time to cook." Offended, the woman decided to order food in a restaurant, since she is such a gourmet. "Mom, she's not a gourmet, but my favorite girl. And I want your acquaintance to go well, so that she likes you and you like her." George hugged his mother's shoulders as much as he could on the cheek to make everything very tasty. "I'm going to my room." The woman was left alone in the kitchen, confused. After sitting at the table for a couple more minutes, she began to clear away the dishes. Her boy has grown up, matured, and now she is no longer the main person in his life, but some strange girl. And so he decided to bring her to their house. This situation was expected. Any mother knows that sooner or later this moment will come. That's how life works. Anne also understood that time was running out. The son may very soon have his own family, and she will have grandchildren. It's only one thing to understand and know that it will happen there sometime in the distant future. And another thing is to stand on the threshold and meet the one who has captured the heart of her son. A sharp stab of jealousy pecked at her heart. But Anne did not want to quarrel with her son. Dinner will still have to be cooked, although there is absolutely no time to run around the shops. The woman sat down at the table again, took out her smartphone, and opened a website with grocery delivery at home. The next day, Anne called her secretary into her office. "Angela, I'm going to leave early today," she told the girl. "You will control everything here, and do not forget to close the office." "Has something happened?" Angela asked. "Yes, George is bringing his girlfriend to meet him today. We need to cook dinner," the boss replied. "Wow, congratulations." "With what, Angela?" Anne was angry. "I have no idea who this girl is, what she wants from my son. And the unknown, scares and worries. And there are so many scams around who are chasing young and successful people." "You're right." Angela nodded her head. "I'll do everything, I'll check it, I'll close it." "That's good," the boss calmed down. The woman took her purse, took out a keychain with car keys and left the office, and Angela remained standing in the office thinking. She had liked the boss's son for a long time. She even showed him signs of attention, often brought coffee, and also dragged homemade pastries from home, tried to feed the guy. He always thanked her, but he didn't pay much attention to the girl. Angela knew and believed that gradually she would be able to win his heart. But now all her dreams are falling apart. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Anne took off her apron and hurried into the hallway. Her son was standing in front of her, holding the hand of a girl of about 20 years old. Her son's friend was smiling shyly. "Mom, meet Alien," said George. "Alien, this is my mom, Anne." "It's a pleasure," the girl said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. George's mother looked at her carefully, waiting for her son to help the girl take off her coat. Alien was wearing a simple knitted blue dress, long blonde hair curled over her shoulders. Anne noted that her son has good taste. The girl is really beautiful. He keeps himself modest. She even breathed a sigh of relief for a moment. Alien, in turn, saw a beautiful, statuesque, elegantly dressed woman in front of her. She looked like she couldn't even be 40 years old. "Come into the living room," George's mom suggested. "I'll be right there. I have more hot stuff in the oven." "Yes, come on in, don't be shy. Make yourself at home." George pushed the girl towards the open doors to the hall. She had been here once before, at a party. But today the room looked very different. There was a beautifully set table in the center. The room was illuminated by a large crystal chandelier with many ringing droplets. There was silence. "Don't be afraid of anything," George whispered in the girl's ear and helped her sit down at the table. "Mom, do you need any help?" Anne was already entering the living room, carrying a platter of baked meat in her hands. "You'd better sit down at the table." There was silence in the room for a while. No one knew where to start a conversation. Mom was the first to break this awkwardness. "Son, take care of the guest and me. Put the salad on." She smiled at the alien. While George was putting food on plates, the woman decided to ask the girl. "Alien, tell us about yourself. What do you do?" "Are you a student?" Anne asked. "No, I'm working." The girl replied softly. "Yes? I wonder who." "Mom, she works as a hairdresser in a beauty salon." George was ahead of the girl with the answer. "She is very talented. She is appreciated at work." "Didn't you get an education?" The guy's mother continued the interrogation. "No, unfortunately," replied Alien. "I took a hairdressing course and immediately went to work." The mother looked at her son significantly. Her first impression of the pretty girl was already beginning to deteriorate. Anne saw an educated girl with a status, or at least a good profession, next to George. "And here's the hairdresser. And who are your parents? What do they do?" Alien was silent, head down. She expected such questions, but it turned out to be very difficult to answer. "Mom, Alien has no parents," George answered for the girl. "And anyway, what are you bothering about? Let the guest eat in peace." "What do you mean there are no parents?" The woman put down her fork and knife. "And who raised you, supported you?" "I grew up in an orphanage." Finally, Alien gathered her willpower and answered decisively. Natalia Ilyinichna's eyebrows went up. She was silent for a while, and then got up, took a dish from the table and asked her son George, "Will you help me make tea?" "Yes, of course." The guy got up from the table and followed his mother. When they disappeared through the door, Alien gathered up the empty plates and headed to the kitchen to help clear the table too. Walking down the hallway, she heard Anne's voice. "Are you crazy? Who did you bring into the house?" She chastised George, the hairdresser from the orphanage. "Are you going to marry her?" "We haven't discussed it yet, but I really love Alien," the guy replied. "Over my dead body, do you hear? I will never let you ruin your life by associating it with this beggar from the orphanage." Suddenly, mother and son noticed in the doorway with plates in their hands. The girl took a few steps forward and put the dishes on the table. "Here, I picked it up from the table," she said, turned around and walked away. "Mom, there must be at least some sense of tact," George said angrily. "How can you not understand? She's my girlfriend." The door lock clanged loudly. It was Alien who left, slamming the door. George rushed after him, putting on his jacket and hat as he went. "Alien, stop." He caught up with her in the yard. "Yes, you stop, I say." He grabbed the girl, turned her around, and held her tightly. "I'm not letting you go anywhere," he said, looking into her eyes. "I love you. And I will never enter your house again." The girl said softly. "Never mind. Mom just doesn't know you yet." He began to kiss her cheeks, wet with tears. Resentment against a woman who, in the first hour of meeting her, poured mud over her, poured out salty drops. She was crying like a child who had been wronged. She was very hurt and hurt. Did she really deserve such hurtful words for all that Alien had to go through? After all, she didn't say a bad word to George's mother. "I want to go home," the girl said, calming down a little. "Come on, I'm with you. I'm not coming back either until Mom apologizes to you." They caught a taxi and got to the Alien house very quickly. George, as usual, stopped at the girl's entrance, hugged and kissed her on the lips. And she suddenly took his hand and said, "Let's go." She pulled George towards the door. They ran up to the floor. The girl hurriedly opened the door. Everything that happened after that should have happened a long time ago. George dreamed of intimacy with his girlfriend, but waited for her to want it herself. And she wanted to. Today, more than ever, she needed his embrace, his love. He was whispering, "I love you. I love you, Dot." When dawn broke, George said, "I want to always be with you. Let's get married, Dot." She did not immediately understand the meaning of his words. She sat up, covered herself with a blanket, and looked at George in surprise. "Are you serious?" "It can't be more serious." "What about your mom?" Looking anxiously into the guy's eyes, Alien asked. "What does my mom have to do with it?" he replied. "She has her own life. I am an adult, self-sufficient person. I have a good job. You and I will get along just fine without her help." The girl threw herself on his chest. "I love you so much," she whispered. They spent the whole next day together, cooking lunch together, walking through the streets of the sleeping area, kissing and feeling absolutely happy. After coming home with their shopping, George and Alien began to cook dinner. Suddenly the phone rang. "This is mine," George said, and went into the room to answer the phone. Sensing something was wrong, Alien sat down on a chair. From what she could hear from the kitchen, the girl realized that George's mother was calling. "I'm not coming back until you reconsider your attitude towards Alien. Mom," the guy was saying. "Stop shouting." "No, I'll come to work tomorrow as usual." "All right, Dot." He returned to the kitchen and saw a sad Alien. "Come on, baby. It's okay. We're together, Dot." He hugged the girl, and then suddenly picked her up in his arms and spun her around. "Aren't they going to feed me in this house today?" She laughed and became light and calm that George did not gather at his mother's first call, and did not leave her after what had happened between them. In the morning, Alien cooked breakfast, but George refused, drinking only a cup of coffee. "I have to run home and change before work," he said. "And in the evening?" asked Alien anxiously. "And what about tonight?" "I'll pick you up at the beauty salon after work. Let's go to your place. Or do you not like my constant presence in that apartment?" "I really like it," the girl smiled. George kissed her and left. When he arrived home, his mother was gone. She went to the publishing house. After changing clothes and taking the folder with the manuscripts he was working on, George also hurried to the office. Angela's secretary met him in the hallway. "Hello. Would you like some coffee?" "No, not now, I'm sorry," the guy answered on the move and hurried to the office of the correction service. He was working on a big project and deadlines are tight. "I wanted to have time to complete the planned amount of work in order to spend the evening with Alien." But about 15 minutes later, the internal phone on his desk rang. I called my mother. Without asking Vera if he could come in, he opened the door to his mother's office. "Did you call?" "Well-mannered people say hello first," Anne said without looking up from the papers on the table. "Well-mannered people do not insult people about whom they know nothing at all and respect the choice of others. Hello, Mom." Anne raised her head and looked at her son attentively. Inside her, there was a struggle between a mother who endlessly loves her only son and a woman whose place a beautiful young girl wants to take. In this struggle, love and jealousy had equal powers. "Hello, son. I need to talk to you." George sat down on a chair next to a large conference table. He didn't want to think about what had happened at their house. But the guy understood that he would have to talk about it. His mother is his own person, and they will have to compromise. "Let's talk," he agreed. "I guess I was wrong. I realized this during the day that you were not at home. I changed my mind a lot. You see, George, this is not the future I imagined for you." "And what did you imagine?" The guy interrupted his mother in anger. "Did you think that I would bring home the daughter of an oligarch, an airy dummy, for whom only trips to salons, spas, and endless shopping are important? Mom, you understand, I love Alien just because I love her, because she loves me. And she does it sincerely. If you want to know, I fell in love with her at first sight. We've been dating for 6 months now. Do you really think that if I had doubted her feelings for even a minute, I would have continued my relationship with her?" "Calm down, son, I believe you. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Anne tried to soften the tone of the conversation. Sit down, tell me, are you serious about marrying an alien? Yes, Mom. I seriously intend to get married. Well, in the end, I have to trust your choice. And in this case, I will soon have grandchildren, right? Well, we didn't think about it. Maybe they will. George was still offended by his mother, although he felt that she was ready for reconciliation. Well, okay, I apologize to Alien. She will soon become a member of our family and my daughter-in-law. Let's apply and let her come to us on the weekend. Let's discuss the preparations for the wedding. George was confused. It wasn't like her mother to make peace so quickly. Anne has always had a strong character, was able to defend her opinion, and did not deviate from it. Otherwise, she would not have been successful in business. But on the other hand, he was glad that she had at least accepted his decision. You really don't mind if we get married? George asked incredulously. Since you love Alien, I don't mind. The main thing for me is your happiness, son. She went up to George and hugged him. It was hard to accept that her son would have his own family, but otherwise she could lose her son. And Anne couldn't let that happen. Thank you, Mom. George thanked me. Only I will live with Alien, so we will come together on the weekend. But this condition does not suit me at all. The mother objected. First of all, there are some rules of decency. The bride and groom do not live in the same apartment before the wedding. And secondly, you have your own house to which you take your young wife. In the meantime, live separately. That's what I insist on. Believe me, it's the right thing to do. There was a steely note in Anne's voice again. George thought for a moment, and then said, You're probably right, Mom. That's settled. I'll be waiting for you at home tonight. In the meantime, go work. Walking down the corridor of the publishing house, George still could not believe that his mother had made concessions to him and was ready to accept Alien. He was already looking forward to telling her about everything tonight, and why wait for the evening? Alien, do you have your passport with you? George asked the girl, having reached her by phone. Yes, what happened? We'll meet at the fountain in the center at lunchtime. Agreed? Okay, what happened? You'll find out. I'll be waiting. George hung up the phone. He thought for a while, and then picked up the smartphone in his hand again and dialed the flower delivery service. He can't lead Alien to apply without a bouquet. 2 months later, George and Alien got married. The young people were happy. Anne was at a loss not to fall into the dirt in front of the guests, and she named more than 50 people. Most of the invited people are colleagues from the publishing house, business partners, and friends of the woman. But the young ones invited Jane and Alex, as well as several friends of George. The wedding was celebrated in a restaurant. Alien looked amazing in a snow-white dress, and George in a blue suit with buds of small white roses seemed very solemn and grown up. Looking at her son, Anne wiped away a tear from time to time. After the wedding, the young couple settled in the apartment of the groom of his mother. After long-term disputes, it was decided that while they would live together with Anne, it would be seen further the apartment is large. There is enough space for everyone. Alien tried to help Anne with the housework. She didn't know how to cook much. They didn't teach this at the orphanage, but I bought a book with recipes and cooked according to it. But her mother-in-law always praised her for her cleanliness. The daughter-in-law was really a very neat girl. She kept the whole apartment clean. Almost immediately after the wedding, the family began a tradition of dining together on Sundays. If on other days the young people could go to a restaurant or eat without waiting for their mother-in-law, then on Sunday from 17 everyone had to be at the table. She cooked mostly for Alien, but Anne often joined her if she was free. So one Sunday the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were cooking Sunday dinner together in the kitchen. George was not at home. He went out to the store. While Alien was chopping vegetables, her husband's mother was flipping through a magazine. Her sister-in-law asked her to move the pot. The woman abruptly stood up, picked up the pot, and then her eyes went dark. She fell to the floor, knocking over a 3-liter bowl of boiling broth. "Oh my God!" screamed Alien and rushed to her husband's mother. She was screaming loudly. Then the scream turned into a soft sob. The girl grabbed the phone and dialed the medics. When George approached the entrance, his mother was already being loaded into the car on a stretcher. Alien was crying nearby. "What's wrong? What's wrong with Mom?" "This is terrible." She dropped a pot of broth on herself. He was very hot. The guy shoved a package into his wife's hands. "Go home, I'll go with her," he said. She couldn't find a place for herself at home. She has already reproached herself 100 times for asking her mother-in-law to remove the saucepan from the stove because she could have done it herself. George returned late in the evening. "How's Mom?" Alien asked anxiously. "Severe burn, he will be in the hospital." The husband replied wearily. "How did this happen?" "I was chopping vegetables, and she was reading something in a magazine. I asked her to remove the saucepan from the heat, and she stood up and then swayed and fell. Maybe I was dizzy. It's my fault." "Come on, it's not your fault. My mother thinks I don't know anything, but her blood pressure has been jumping for a long time. Age doesn't make anyone healthier. Everything will be fine, don't worry." The patient was in the hospital for a whole month. George had to take over the duties of the director of the publishing house. Alien asked for a vacation at work and took care of her mother-in-law. She hardly left her side, stayed in the hospital room from morning to evening, fed her, helped her change clothes, talked to her, and read the manuscripts given to her by George. During this time, the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law became very close. After being discharged from the hospital, they came home as relatives. At dinner, Anne said in a serious tone, "That's it, my children. I've had time to think about everything. George, since you're doing a great job as director, so be it. Stay in the manager's chair, and I will rest. Mom, are you sure?" "Don't interrupt. I have another solution." His mother cut him off. "I bought a plot in the city a long time ago. It's time for us to get out of this 3-room den, which I hope will soon become too small for us. You're going to give me grandchildren, aren't you? So son, start building a house. I think we can do it in 2 or 3 years." What a surprise. Alien gasped in shock. "This is all very well, of course, but I would also like to discuss something with you." I turned to George's wife and mother. "I have some savings, and I thought my wife will stop working for her uncle, or rather for her aunt. She may have her own beauty salon, albeit a small one, but still her own. What do you think, Mom?" Alien looked in surprise at her husband, then at her mother-in-law. Everything that was said at the table that evening was very unexpected for her. She could not imagine herself as the owner of the salon. "That's a great idea," Anne smiled. "Let her learn how to run a business, and you help her." "I do not know what to say," the girl said happily. "That's how much you need to do: find a room, buy equipment, recruit staff. You can handle everything. You're a smart girl." "Well, that's nice," Anne said, looking at her happy son and daughter-in-law. As they say, there would be no happiness, but misfortune would help. 8 years have passed. The family has long since moved into a large 2-story house with its own plot. Anne set up a small flower garden, took care of plants, grew roses, asters, peonies. George ran a publishing house that flourished and brought in good income. Alien has turned into a real businesswoman. Everything was fine, but Alien still couldn't get pregnant. She and George went through a lot of examinations, but all in vain. She never told her husband about the termination of her pregnancy, which she had done many years ago. She didn't want him to know about that unpleasant event in her life. But in her heart, Alien blamed herself for not being able to give birth to her husband's son or daughter. Only the absence of children has overshadowed the life of this family. George was preparing to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the publishing house. It was announced to the staff that the corporate event would be held in the restaurant. Everyone is invited, as well as regular customers and partners. Everyone was in high spirits. George was giving the last assignment to Vera, who stood in front of him with a notebook, writing down everything he said. She still hadn't given up trying to win over the handsome director. George paused, looked her up and down critically. Her clothes were too provocative. "Angela, did it ever occur to you to dress more decently for work?" the man asked. "Don't you like it?" The girl was defiantly spinning around herself. In my opinion, it is very fashionable and stylish. In my opinion, it's just vulgar, the director interrupted her. The day before, George's mother again started talking about the fact that they could not give her grandchildren in any way, which brought Alien to tears. The man was already so tired of rushing between his mother and his wife, calming one or the other, that sometimes he did not even want to return home. Remembering his wife's tantrum yesterday, he sighed heavily. He also wanted a son, but he loved Alien no less than 8 years ago, and was not going to part with her just because there was no baby in their family. His mother indirectly insisted that George get a divorce, all the time repeating that the years were flying by, that she was getting old and would soon not be able to babysit her grandson if he ever did show up. Trying to banish sad thoughts from himself, George plunged into work. My wife refused to go to a corporate party on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of the publishing house, citing ill health. She cried all night again and fell asleep in the morning only thanks to the pills she took. He kissed his wife as usual and left the house. Alien watched sadly as her husband got into the car and drove out the gate. The woman felt that she had been in a terrible state for a long time. Even the 2 weeks at sea that they spent with her husband this summer could not completely rid her of this condition. She didn't want to go to a restaurant with her husband, have fun, and be happy when she felt so bad. Also, the mother-in-law constantly added fuel to the fire, whispered to her husband that it was necessary to leave a barren wife, and sometimes openly expressed her dissatisfaction, bringing Alien to tears. The marriage was bursting at the seams, and she didn't know what to do. The restaurant was fun and noisy. The guests were dancing. From time to time, a pause was announced, which was filled with congratulations and gifts. The publisher's birthday was a great success. Only George somehow got over it very quickly. He downed glass after glass, hardly eating, and by the end of the evening he was almost on his feet. "Thank you all so much for the congratulations. I love you all, everyone," shouted the sweetest director. Such behavior by George Ilyich, whom the whole city knew, could cause irreparable damage to the reputation of the publishing house, but he did not care. At one point he even started dancing, which shocked some guests and made others have fun. Someone even took out a smartphone and started filming the inappropriate behavior of the director of the publishing house. Watching all this, Angela's secretary became more and more horrified. She knew her boss well. The next day he will bitterly regret what he did the day before. But now something had to be done to prevent the situation from going too far. So that George would not embarrass himself in front of his partners, who were already squinting at him, looking disapprovingly. "Let me dance with you." Angela grabbed the director by the waist, hugged him to her, and began to push him towards the exit. "Where are you taking me?" "I want to have fun," muttered George. "And now we will continue to have fun, only in the fresh air." Angela coaxed him, continuing to push him towards the exit. On the street, she caught the first taxi she saw and put the director there. She sat down next to him and gave the driver the address. "Where are we going, Angela?" George asked her. "To a secret place where no one will know how you fought today." "George Ilyich," the secretary said affectionately. "Do we need to go there?" the director asked, trying to lift his head from Vera's lap. He seemed ready to go to sleep in the car. After paying off the taxi driver, Angela barely pulled the director out of the car and dragged him to her home. The girl lived in a hostel, but she had a good relationship with the janitor. So, after grumbling a little, the old woman let her pass with a man. In the room, Angela took the bottle of cognac she had started from the cabinet and poured it into glasses. "Okay, you need to shake things up a little," she said, holding up the man's card. After drinking a little, after a while George began to come to his senses. "Where am I?" he asked. "And you're in a secret place," Angela said affectionately, hugging and kissing him. "You'll be very happy here. You have no idea how good it's going to be for you." George did not understand well what he was doing, but he did not lose his masculine strength. Even despite the large amount of alcohol she drank, she achieved what she wanted. She finally dragged the director into her bed. In the morning, George had a terrible headache. He was horrified to find himself in a small room in an unfamiliar bed, with his secretary lying next to him. Still swaying slightly, he got out of bed, found his clothes, and began to get dressed. At home, George said that he had had too much, did not want to return home like this, and slept on the sofa in his office at the publishing house. "Go take a shower and go to rest." You need to sleep it off, said Alien. Ugh, how you stink. Why did you drink so much? Forgive me, my dear. I don't know what came over me. George's mother and wife tried not to remember this incident anymore, but Angela, at every opportunity, reminded the director of how good it was together. She continued to stick to him at work every day. George was stressed out by all this, but he felt guilty. He was angry at himself, not at Angela. One day, the secretary entered the office uninvited. She looked worried. Is something wrong? Angela, George asked. It happened. I'm pregnant. Angela lowered her head. From you. George got up from his desk, walked over to the secretary and looked into her eyes. You're not lying. Is there no mistake? No. What should I do now? Angela sobbed. Calm down. And what should be done in this situation? At least to provide for me and the child, at most to get married. After all, this is your baby. So the second is excluded. I'll help you with the money. I still need a place to live. It's not like raising a kid in a dorm. I'll decide go. The girl left the office, and George sat down in an armchair and dropped his head into his hands. He's going to have a long-awaited baby. His blood, not from my wife. And this is a fact that both pleased and worried the man at the same time. He very quickly came up with a place to comfortably accommodate Angela and her unborn child in Alina's apartment. It's empty anyway. George will say that he handed her over to an employee who has temporary difficulties. 2 more years have passed. That night, when Alien unexpectedly witnessed her husband's conversation with his mother, she could no longer sleep. She and George became more and more estranged from each other and no longer made any attempts to get closer. We lived as friends, as buddies, sometimes even as neighbors. Now, staying late at work, George did not even consider it necessary to explain the reason. Alien went to work in the salon as if on autopilot. And then such a shock. George has another family. Her husband has a child on the side. The baby she couldn't give birth to. In the morning, Alien drank coffee and went to the salon. Thoughts of the double life of her beloved husband did not leave her. She walked, hardly seeing anything in front of her. She was startled out of her state by the screeching of car tires right at the pedestrian crossing. A huge black Jeep hit a girl with a stroller. Alien rushed to the victim. At this time, the driver of the Jeep turned on the rear and disappeared from view in just a matter of seconds. Girl, are you alive? Alien bent over the young mother lying on the asphalt. A crowd had already begun to gather. A pool of blood was slowly developing on the asphalt next to the victim's head. Hearing the baby crying, Alien rushed to pick up the overturned stroller. The boy in the blue suit was crying. The woman unhooked the restraining straps on the stroller and grabbed the child in her arms. Hush, hush, little one, she whispered to the baby. It's okay, it's all over now. Don't cry. She rocked the boy, hugging him to her. At that time, the ambulance sirens were heard. People stumbled, giving doctors access to the girl lying on the asphalt. The victim was put on a stretcher and loaded into a car. Almost simultaneously, the police arrived with the ambulance. Is she alive? The uniformed officer asked the doctor. So far, yes, but I'm afraid it won't take, said the doctor. Here, there was a phone next to her. Okay, give it to me. I need to call my relatives. Are there any witnesses? A policeman shouted into the crowd. I'm a witness, said Alien, continuing to rock the baby in her arms. The policeman looked closely at the frightened woman with the child. I had to decide something, call my relatives. In the meantime, what should I do with it? Let this woman babysit him. Get in the car, the employee said, and he began to look through the contacts in the victim's smartphone and call the numbers that he thought belonged to the closest people. On the way to the hospital, the baby calmed down and fell asleep. Carefully carrying him in her arms, Alien entered the emergency room and sat down on a chair. Wait here, my father will arrive now. I got through, the policeman told the woman. What about the boy's mom? The alien asked. She's being operated on. Nothing is known yet. We will wait. The employee left, leaving Alien alone with the baby in her arms. She stared at the baby's face and couldn't take her eyes off it. He looked about a year old. Maybe more, maybe less. Alien didn't understand this. He smacked his lips pathetically in his sleep, sometimes smiling slightly at something. The woman's heart was bleeding. She did not notice how the door to the room opened, and an agitated man ran into the room. Alien raised her head and saw George in front of her. The husband was struggling to cope with excitement, breathing heavily. "What are you doing here?" George asked, not understanding why his wife was holding his son in her arms. "And you?" Alien was even more surprised. "I got a call. They told me that Angela was in an accident with a child." "Which Angela?" "Meh." Alien didn't understand anything at all. George took a deep breath and sat down next to his wife. He looked at his son, stroked his head. "This is my son, Eric," the man said softly. "A son?" Oh. She understood everything, but for some reason she didn't feel any emotions at all. "Yes, it happened that way." "He's very handsome." "He looks like you," Alien smiled. George looked in surprise at his wife, who was admiring his child born to another woman. The wife did not throw a tantrum, did not ask questions. She was hugging his son to her chest, and he was sleeping peacefully, smiling at something in his sleep. "I'll explain everything to you." I wanted to say something to George. "Don't. The main thing is that he is alive. The main thing is that the baby was not injured." Alien put her finger to her lips. The figure of a doctor appeared at the end of the corridor. "I'm really sorry. We did everything we could. She died. Be strong." The doctor turned around and left. Alien and George were silent. The baby in the woman's arms stirred, waking up, as if he felt that his mother was no more. Alien was the first to speak. "What a horror. What's going to happen now?" she said, not looking at her husband. "I don't know. She doesn't even have any relatives. She was a visitor, it seems," George said. Alien stood up resolutely. The only right plan matured in her head. The city cemetery was quiet. Autumn leaves flew off the trees, laying down on the paths, granite slabs of tombstones and graves. A small group of people saw off Angela on her last journey. There were red flowers on her grave. "Angela loved everything bright and catchy, even if there are red roses on her grave," George said. Among those who saw Angela off on her last journey were colleagues. Dressed in black clothes, they looked sadly at the photo of a beautiful young woman who just a year ago became the mother of a beautiful baby. The colleagues were talking quietly. No one could accept until now that a cheerful, never discouraged, very energetic woman died under the wheels of a reckless driver who did not even consider it necessary to call an ambulance and provide first aid. George and Alien were standing at the grave. They were silent. The terrible tragedy made them close, dear people again. George took his wife's hand and stroked her palm. He did not doubt for a minute that everything in their lives would be fine. The husband and wife stood for a while longer and slowly walked along the cemetery alley towards the gate. There, outside the gate, Anne was strolling leisurely, pushing a stroller in front of her with her little grandson Eric. Anthony stopped paying due attention to his wife a long time ago. He looked more and more at other women and girls, allowing himself to sit with the men over beer. What can I say? The man was all like his grandfather and father, former immigrants from a distant village who lived in fishing and hunting. And even after moving to the city and marrying a city girl, Anthony did not give up his habits. This, of course, always infuriated Barbara. What can I do? She complained to her only friend and neighbor Sophie, an old teacher and Jewish woman, who it is unknown how she ended up in this city, and on what means she lived is unclear. But why do you think so? You are a smart, intelligent woman, a primary school teacher. And you say that. Don't I understand? It is you, Sophie, who have children and grandchildren who will stand up for you. On the other hand, who will stand up for me. Understand I'm an orphan, And thanks for that, I was able to learn with my own head. And if Anthony chases me, then where should I go? To the old room? You're just afraid of difficulties. That's understandable. But then see for yourself. Anthony is a bore and an ignoramus. Ill-mannered, but on the other hand, they are all like that. Was it really possible that your late husband cheated? Barbara looked at her neighbor in surprise. I thought mine wasn't walking when I was carrying our first and second babies under my heart. I was walking. Just remember, Barbara, some walk wisely, while others, like yours, put it on display for everyone to see. Sophie, does everyone really know now that he has a mistress? The neighbor smiled sadly, looked at poor Barbara, and stroked her hand. Barbara, just come to terms with it, and think about how you can give birth to a baby. How long have you been together? In a few years. But it just doesn't work out. Yes, I haven't tried anything. I went to see doctors and sorcerers, but everything doesn't work out. The doctor says that the problem may be in the husband himself. Well, how do you find out? You can't ask him this directly. Knowing your husband's tough temper, I dare to assume that such a conversation will end in good hassle. Well, on the other hand, how to check? You really can't give him a mistress. If she got pregnant, that means the reason is you. At least on the other hand, he may leave for her if his mistress carries a child from him. And men are so unpredictable. No, Anthony won't leave. His father won't let him. Are you sure about this, Barbara? The woman nodded her head affirmatively, wiping away accumulated tears with a handkerchief. She had confidence in her father-in-law. It was he who found Barbara for his son, introduced him, and forced him to marry when he found out that they were dating and even intended to live together. Then he threatened his son that, if he divorced Barbara, he would not see the inheritance of his own ears. And there was a considerable inheritance there, as the woman herself believed. Well, what if your mistress gets pregnant? What happens? He won't abandon his child, his dear one. He won't abandon him. He will pay child support. And then, if anything happens, he will arrange guardianship. He is such a... Especially if there is an heir, he will break anyone's head for him. And the mistress will not agree to blackmail. My hand is strong, and if anything happens, it can burn you. Yes, he's a tough guy. Okay, see for yourself, but by the way, I have a couple of friends here. They went to visit a knowledgeable grandmother. If anything, I ask her address. Thank you, Sophie, you will always listen to me and console me. Nothing, neighbor. What can you do? This is our lot. If you need anything, get back to me. The neighbor left, and Barbara sat for a long time at the kitchen table in the empty 3-room apartment that Anthony's parents gave them for their wedding. And I thought and thought and thought and thought and couldn't come up with anything worthwhile. She understood that her husband was walking, and there was strong evidence for this. What can I do? Is it true? Shouldn't we put flyagrics in his borscht so that he doesn't go for a walk? But the woman did not know how far her relationship with the beauty went, who came to their city to work as an agronomist and part-time accountant at a large woodworking enterprise. It was there that her husband worked as a mechanic, and she worked as a primary school teacher. How good you are today. Look what I brought you. And Anthony handed the woman a luxurious necklace made of natural pearls of dark blue, almost black color. Oh, Anthony, where did you get such beauty from? And what will your wife say to all this? What will she say? Nothing. I bought the same one for her too. So there's nothing to be offended by. But if you don't love her, then why are you still with her? The woman cunningly tried to find out what was going on in his house. My grandfather is on Barbara's side, and he said that if I divorced, I would be disinherited. And there, believe me, there is something to fight for. Come on, you're agile and young. Arms and legs, like everything else, are there. You can earn money on the spot. And with a laugh, she grabbed him by the place of origin. Jadwiga didn't want to miss out on Anthony. What if the wife finds out about us? The accountant gently wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed his chin. Nothing will happen, he will cry, that's all. Anthony was sure that this would happen. Even if we come to your house together? Jadwiga specifically emphasized the word your home while observing the reaction. Yours. Jadwiga, what are you talking about? What are you trying to achieve? When we started dating, we discussed this point. Don't touch your wife, you and I live separately. And she waits for me at home and cooks soups for me. Well, at least invite me to dinner? Or didn't I even earn that? Anthony, with a dissatisfied look, threw her hands off his shoulders and pulled away. He was already starting to get tired of this conversation. Okay, that's it. I have to go. Lunch was almost over, and I still hadn't had lunch. At the mere mention of homemade soup, Anthony felt a queasy feeling in his stomach and an urgent growl in his stomach. His Barbara's soup was always rich and delicious. Even my mother had never cooked something so delicious. So that means you don't love me? Jadwiga wailed in her polish and turned theatrically to the window, covering her face with her hands. Don't cry. I'll be back soon. In the meantime, it's time to work. Anthony quickly left the accountant's office and met his father nose to nose on the threshold. Dad, what are you doing here? His surprise knew no bounds. Yes, I decided to check on you, son. Your mother went home with Barbara to visit you. And I'm here, and I see that you've found yourself a new mistress. The man nodded at the sign hanging on the door of the accountant's office, Jadwiga Volchek. He looked at his son reproachfully, trying not to give him a ringing slap in the face. After all, this is not how he and his mother raised him. Oh, not like that. Bruno, although he came from the outback and had considerable health and masculine strength, never cheated on his wife. Yes, in my youth I had no hobbies, but when I got married I completely swore off cheating. But the son apparently didn't follow suit. He doesn't want to settle down. What are you talking about, Dad? I found out about salaries and bonuses. Do you really think everything is the worst? Oh, there's no need to tell me fairy tales. You reek of women's perfume a kilometer away. He shook his finger at him. Bruno wanted to say that he would sign over all his property to Barbara, but he lost his tongue just in time. It was not worth it to set up a woman like this ahead of time. Otherwise, you never know what would hit his fool in the head. Dad, for Barbara I'll rip out anyone's throat, and she's my wife before people and God. Okay, at least you understand this. Okay, let's go home. I asked the director for you. My mother and I have a conversation with you. Anthony nodded and obediently followed his father. And Jadwiga stood under the door and heard it all perfectly. No, she didn't eavesdrop. It was just that the men spoke so loudly, openly, that everything could be heard perfectly behind the flimsy door. What now? All I can do is enjoy his caresses. He will never leave her, and a stingy tear rolled down her pretty face. Yes, what can I say? The woman was simply catastrophically unlucky. She didn't find a husband in her homeland, couldn't start a relationship, and there were only potential candidates for lovers. And so that someone would take them and ask them to marry. They simply weren't there. All the men passed by. Sometimes they stayed in her life longer, sometimes just for the night. Others spoke about her beauty, others about a woman's intelligence. Well, what does it matter to her? No family, no child, nothing. Jadwiga increasingly began to think about not just marrying Anthony, but having a baby with him. She knew from her lover that they had no children, but this family apparently had amassed enormous wealth. And maybe it's true. Follow your grandmother's advice and give birth to a boy or girl. Let it be a joy. Grandma, but how can I give birth? I've already tried and can't get pregnant. Maybe you can tell me what. And your boyfriend, does he have children? Or maybe infertile? This is important, granddaughter. Yes, it seems like he and his wife have no children. But on the side he said that there was a boy and a girl. And she might be lying. He's not lying, said the grandmother, laying out the cards on the table and looking at Anthony's fate. You know, my girl, I'll tell you one thing, that you shouldn't be together. But if you are thinking of giving birth to him, give birth. The baby will be nice, and his destiny will be wonderful. Granny, are you sure about this? Jadwiga looked carefully at the old woman who was smoking a pipe and looked at her granddaughter with a smile. Don't doubt it, I definitely see it. And my cards don't lie. The heredity there is good, and his relatives are rich. If they like their grandson, consider that a well-fed life is guaranteed for you. Jadwiga thought for a minute and began to finger her ancient rosary, mentally calculating each option. But then the grandmother took her word. Don't doubt it, you'll get more than you do now. The main thing is to conceive this child on your Anthony's marital bed in his home. Grandma, well, this is all ready. Don't think about it, do as I say, and everything will be good for you. Now go, I need to rest. Come tomorrow, I'll give you the collection. Just add it to your little man's food, and that's it. Consider it done. Oh God, thought Jadwiga, sitting behind the wheel of her car and heading towards the city. And why did she manage to go to her grandmother in the village for advice? Well, what can she advise? Herbs, rituals. Yes, in our age of technology and numbers, even though the very thought of the family's wealth haunted her. Maybe it's really worth thinking about the grandmother's words and not giving up on her plan? The woman turned the key in the ignition and pressed the gas pedal. The car let out a loud animal roar and took off, leaving behind a cloud of dust. Barbara had been studying with her students since the very morning. The woman was happy when she gave all of herself to the children, and they pleased her not only with good grades, but also with their attention and love. But even today, Barbara more and more often returned her thoughts to yesterday's event, the arrival of Anthony's parents. They arrived and brought a bunch of gifts and local delicacies, but it was Anthony's mother who started the conversation with her, which alarmed and impressed this woman. Yes, it's understandable, old people always wanted grandchildren, but she and her husband live for so long and nothing comes of it. This frightened her at first, then made her despondent, but now Barbara has simply resigned herself to it. They gave me an address here, and I strongly advise you to go to it. The woman handed her a piece of paper on which the address of one village was written in beautiful handwriting. Wow. Judging by the name, it is somewhere on the border with Romania or Poland. Barbara.
Yes. Did you understand everything correctly? This is the address of a healer. And by the way, she helped many of my friends. Because Barbara, my advice to you, if you want kids, go to her. If not, then I'm sorry. I tried to do the best, otherwise, God forbid, he will find a woman on the side and make her a child. And what's next?
Barbara was sitting on a chair, crumpling a napkin in her hand and nervously biting her lips. She understood perfectly well how right her mother-in-law was, and if no measures are taken, the husband may simply leave. But you are an educated woman. How can you believe in all these superstitions? These superstitions, as you say, my dear, have helped me more than once to return my husband to the family, to give birth to a son, and to do many other things with the help of the most ordinary herbs and words. Don't underestimate this power. And what do you have to lose? Nothing at all, Barbara thought to herself, wiped away her tears and looked carefully at the piece of paper. And I'll tell Anthony that you'll come to rest with me. So don't worry about my son. Barbara mentally nodded her head and agreed. In the evening, lying in bed, she returned to this conversation over and over again. Anthony did not come home, and since his parents arrived, he spends the night in the garage. To all the questions why, he answered sharply that he did not intend to listen to his parents' moral teachings, so he would simply live in the garage. It's good that at least I come home for dinner, and you cook your own signature soup. Barbara smiled and nodded her head to her husband, because she knew perfectly well that he simply adores her signature dish and cannot live without it. He even once jokingly said that if they separated, he would definitely come to her for dinner. Anthony, what makes you think that I will have a new husband? Do I need you and only you? Yes, that's me, by the way. This was at the very beginning of their relationship. But now the issue with the children has become so urgent that even her signature dish is not able to save the rapidly sinking marriage. Okay, maybe it's good, but the face is not at home. It will be possible to pay attention to his parents and calmly think about the words of his mother-in-law, in whose person she found an assistant. Yeah, what if he really took a mistress? And the garage is just a go-ahead. Barbara turned over on her side and then simply got out of bed and began to walk around the room. She was truly tormented by doubts, but what could she do? She was distracted from her sad thoughts by a quiet knock on the door. Barbara, aren't you sleeping? The mother-in-law's voice was quiet so as not to wake up her already sleeping husband. No, Mary, come in. I heard you spinning around from the next room. And now you are pacing the room. Are you still thinking about my words or whether Anthony has found someone else? Both, it's all somehow intertwined into a ball. And to be honest, I can't figure it out. Everything is going so smoothly with you and your husband. Hey, no, honey, now we've gotten used to each other. And in his youth, my Nicholas was very wayward and violent. Do you know what guys from the outback are like in this regard? Jealous and free at the same time. Do not, you know. Maybe even good. Anthony is ours, one might say almost urban. Not too rowdy. But according to your Nicholas, you wouldn't say that he is so violent. Oh, take my word for it. If you looked at the wrong person, you'll get a slap in the face. The dress was shorter than it was supposed to be. It could have been pulled by the hair. Not to mention wearing makeup to work, especially to the store. It even got to the point that one day he cut my hair. Imagine. Are you kidding? Barbara listened and couldn't believe it all. It was so. A friend invited me to her wedding, and Nicholas was in town then. Imagine someone told him that your wife not only came to the wedding in a new dress, but also braided her hair with ribbons. So he flew in like crazy, grabbed a sickle and cut off my braid with ribbons right at the back of my head. I then roared over my braid, and it was a noble one, as thick as my arm. I raised her from a very young age. I hope Anthony won't be like that. Don't worry about it. By the way, my grandmother also helped people, which is why she helped pacify my Nicholas's temper and give birth to Anthony. Don't look. I didn't immediately carry a little one under my heart, probably in the 5th year of marriage. And now I want to help you too. But why? Why do you need this? Then, for my Anthony, I want the best wife and daughter-in-law. And that's who you are. After all, you never know what kind of bitch would covet her husband as much as our wealth. Believe me, I've seen more than one of these. But this is so lyrics and romances. Now, don't think. Better put on your robe and let's go to the kitchen to drink tea. I brought one wonderful collection. It will help improve your sleep and calm your nerves. 2 women were sitting in the kitchen by candlelight and drinking tea. They chatted like old friends. And who would have thought that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law could get along so well? Nobody. The next day, early in the morning, Mary dialed her son and, in the tone of a gallant commander, clearly said, "Anthony, are you coming home for breakfast?" Apparently, the son said that he had already had breakfast. That's why she immediately posed the next question. "By the way, I need Barbara. And I'm temporarily taking her from your family nest. I hope not for long." "Don't worry, son, you won't be left an orphan without food. I want to send the girl to a resort for a couple of days to relax." Well, with your commanding tone, how can anyone argue with you? Take it. And let Barbara rest as much as she wants. That's what we decided on. Well, Barbara, now you are free like a bird for a few days, or even a week. By the way, if necessary, I will help you apply for sick leave at work. Yes, in principle, it's not worth it. We have summer and holidays. True, first graders sometimes attend after-school classes, but due to the accumulated weekends and days off, I can find time during the week. But what will I tell her? I have never communicated with such people. Nothing. You just come to her, and then she will do everything herself. There are rumors about her that the old woman sees everything. Barbara took a sip of aromatic tea and looked carefully at her mother-in-law, trying to understand and accept everything she was saying. Don't worry, you'll find her right away. Within a few days, Barbara packed a small bag and called a taxi that took her to the station. Standing on the platform, she kept thinking, is she doing the right thing? Yes, maybe it's true Mary. It's better to do it and regret it than not to do it, and rack your brains over the missed chance. Yes, don't doubt it, you're doing everything right. The young voice of a handsome boy sounded right next to her ear, and Barbara jerked in surprise. Sorry if I scared you. Do you need help with things? Yes, I would be grateful. Are you in this carriage? Yes, 13th place. Wow, a damn dozen. But you are coming with us, dear lady, and our cheerful company will entertain you all the way, if you don't mind. Yes, of course, I don't mind. Give me your bag. And the guy helped her bring her things to her place and sat her down when the cheerful company of young guys began to take their places. Barbara looked carefully at the cheerful guys who were apparently going on a camping trip. You are probably going on a hike? Barbara carefully inserted her word into the conversation of the young people. Well, how can I say a hike? We fifth-year students are studying the culture of one fascinating region on the border of 3 cultures. And so we go to the village. We will collect local stories, ethnic groups, songs, as they say, the culture of the local indigenous population, and the 3 nationalities living in this region. Or rather, within the framework of one very interesting village for us. How amazing. This means that God himself sent you to me. I am also going to this village. At that moment, the conductor looked into their compartment and sweetly asked if they needed a bed and whether they should serve tea. Yes, dear girl, said Barbara. Serve it. In the meantime, in return I treated you to a pie from my grandmother. Oh, thank you. This will be for dinner. And by the way, as you understand it, you are traveling in compartments for everyone? We arrive in the morning, almost before dawn. Don't worry, I'll wake you up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll bring bed linen and tea later. The conductor left, and the company continued to settle down in its places. Yes, God sent me these young people. It will be fun to ride. And if anything happens, they will show you what and where on the spot. But how to start an interrupted conversation, Barbara thought. But then the young man himself took the conversation in the right direction. What is your name? Here I am, Oleg. And you, as I understand it, are going with us to the same village. I am Barbara, as the Georgian queen, and apparently I am going with you. Affairs? Yes, there is one thing. I think you will also find it interesting. Wow. We are directly pursued by success all the way to this region, Oleg said confidently, and he sat down more comfortably, preparing to listen. Apparently you have something to tell us. Yes, they told me that there is in this village, somewhere even on its outskirts, an old woman who seems to be a healer, herbalist and witch all rolled into one. Young people, I just ask you not to laugh, but I need to get to her. Wow. It's as if God himself sent you to us. Can we go to her with you? It's true, we are interested in everything. But if you don't mind. Yes, I don't mind. On the contrary, the support of young people is important to me. I really hope you won't laugh at me. That like this. An older woman believes in all this nonsense. No, we won't laugh, the girl said and extended her hand in greeting. My name is Helga. Can you tell me what problem you are coming to her with, if it's not a secret? Barbara closed her eyes for a minute and wondered whether it was worth exposing her own grief and problems to people's rumors. But at that second it burst through her. What can I say? After all, each of us has had moments when we want to talk about everything to a stranger, to shift our problems at least for a minute. Yes, you understand, young people. Maybe I'm wrong myself. Maybe it just happened this way, but my husband and I haven't been able to have a child for a year now. They seem to be healthy, they underwent examinations, but nature does not give us a chance to become parents. Maybe the problem is me. After all, my husband has a child on his side. But that's what they say, and I'm barren. My mother-in-law treats me as if she were her own daughter, but not at all. I'm afraid that my husband will leave for someone else, and she will give birth to a child, and I will remain out of work. Yes, and I intuitively feel that he has a mistress. I don't know how serious it is. The company of young people listened and remained silent, because everyone understood her grief and sadness, and then Alex tried to somehow cheer everyone up. And here you will check how much the old woman is a master of her craft. But by the way, our curator, historian Pablo, spoke about an old woman living in this village. Maybe this is her. This will be great. Sure, the topic of my fortune-telling. And he cheerfully raised his hand, and his idea was immediately picked up by the girl Helga. Then the topic of ancient rituals for pregnancy is mine. This, by the way, is very interesting, and as far as I know, no one has written it yet. So my work will be unique and inimitable. There is nothing unique. After all, this is all well-forgotten old stuff, said a guy with a thin beard that made him look like a deacon from the local parish from the top shelf. Barbara listened to them and smiled. After all, how good it was to travel in the company of such young people, ready to help and support in the most unusual decision. It was fun to ride. Evening imperceptibly turned to night, and the company, slowly settling into place, began to prepare for bed. The only one who could not sleep was Barbara, who was lying and looking at the shelf. I thought about the old woman, about her relationship with her husband, and about what would happen next. And Anthony at these moments was hugging the other one with all his might, giving her caresses and kisses. The woman carefully pulled her lover away from her and looked into his eyes. Maybe we shouldn't rush and act like this thoughtlessly. Your parents are probably at home, and I'm not interested in tumbling on my marital bed. Jadwiga, but understand, my wife and I haven't slept together for a month. Yes, and I like you very much. He tried to kiss her, but she pulled away, and breaking away from his embrace, sat down at her desk. I don't think this is a good idea. Yes, and I need to work. Work? How to bring you gifts, you always had time. The same skins for your new mink coat, ring and all. How now? I'm free, you need to work. Amazing. Jadwiga realized that she had gone a little too far, immediately jumped up and walked up to Anthony, gently hugging his waist. She kissed him lightly on the chin, but didn't get angry. You see, I need to get used to the idea that you and I will be doing this in the place where you slept with your wife. Just give me time. Okay, I'll go. I still need to eat and work. But tomorrow I think you and I will come to visit me. He winked at her and left the office, quietly closing the door. Anthony walked down the corridor and whistled a light melody, and Jadwiga put her head on her hands folded on the table and sobbed silently. But the truth is, how could she stoop to just running after a married man like that, being led by him? But in her youth she was the first beauty for whom the most enviable gentleman remained. Now what? There is simply no trace left of the past. How to be? Maybe we should just pack our things and move to another city and get a new job. Although on the other hand, what will change from this? Well, even if she finds a new job there, what will that do for her? Absolutely nothing. After all, Anthony's place will be taken by another, the same. She wiped away her tears and opened the window, taking a few deep breaths. We need to calm down, otherwise the director will come in and she'll be sitting there, crying and ugly. What will she say about her eyes then? As for Anthony, it's worth going to visit him and doing as her grandmother told her. Then you can think about the future. But Jadwiga did not even suspect that the fast train from the outback was taking Barbara to her own grandmother. Well, Barbara, our station Oleg said when all 5 of them went out onto the platform early in the morning, when the sun had not yet risen and the early fog covered the grass with a shroud. Now let's get your suitcase and think about what we should do. Come on, Oleg, I'll carry him myself, he's light. By the way, look, there is a horse harnessed to a cart. Maybe they will give us a ride to the village. Indeed, nearby stood a horse harnessed to a cart, where a man of unknown age was dozing. He always came to the station with his mare, because he knew very well that only this train would make a stop near their village. And many of the sufferers are looking for their famous grandmother Elsa, as everyone called her. And at her age, she could still give odds to many young people. What kind of braid? As thick as your hand and up to your waist. One day he saw Elsa swimming late at night on their lake. Where even strong men don't go, they said that this lake has no bottom. Who wants to check whether this is true or not? And she splashed in the water, on which the shimmer of moonlight glittered. How can you not believe that she is a witch? Especially when this old woman comes out of the water, and her wet hair, like a veil down her back, drags along her waist. Bruno. He shook the reins, and his filly set off, heading as usual towards the people. Young good. By any chance did you come to visit our Elsa? Yes to her. And you probably wait for such petitioners and sufferers every time. No, my grandmother told me about you. And he burst into a very unpleasant laugh, which gave many goosebumps. But seriously, I'm here every morning, because they go to see our grandmother a lot, so that's how I earn extra money. Get into the cart, I'll take you in. If necessary, you can stay in my hut. I live alone, and the house is big. Thank you, Alex said and looked at his companions. You were sent to us by higher powers. But I don't know what higher powers are. But since we came, it was certainly out of great need. Come on, sit down. There's no need for you to be cold. We'll come to me, give you some tea, and then to our grandmother's. But she doesn't accept morning prayers before the end. And she lives in the village. And how far is it from you? Alex couldn't calm down and kept asking the man, and he answered very willingly. Well, how is it in the village? Rather, behind the village, go a couple of kilometers further inland to the forest lake. She lives on the edge of the forest and collects herbs there. Does she have any relatives? Barbara inserted her word, trying to keep up with the young people and not be branded a prude. Yes, I had a daughter, but she died of a cold. An only granddaughter, Jadwiga, remained, but she lives in the city and rarely visits her grandmother. The girl became arrogant that Elsa would give her her gift. But I think that's where it all ends. Jadwiga has no talent, or doesn't, or simply doesn't want to. And then let them decide among themselves. The places here were truly beautiful, such a nature untouched by man and technology. Apparently her mother-in-law was right. These are places of power, but soon they stopped in front of a fairly large house, where their driver directed his horse and jumped off the cart as usual. He extended his hand to Barbara and said, "Let me help you." "My name is Bruno. What about you?" The man's eyes were so blue that such a color simply does not exist in nature. "Barbara," the woman said, spellbound, and extended her hand. Bruno's palm turned out to be tender and strong at the same time, and with a slight movement the man helped her get off the cart, took her suitcase, and led her into his house. More precisely, it was not a simple village house, but a solid wood frame, which not everyone could afford. And as the woman noted, almost all the houses in the village were made of logs. Yes, we have a fairly prosperous village, and all thanks to Elsa. The man's words sounded like an answer to Barbara's silent question. It's because of her that a lot of people come to us, and where there is demand, there will always be supply. It's right. And the nature in your village is beautiful. Well, go into the house and serve tea, as promised. You can have tea, or something stronger. And if necessary, a bathhouse can be organized. The man said in a quiet voice, smiled slyly, and looked at the woman with bright blue eyes. This look, voice and touch made Barbara feel either sweaty or cold. She had never experienced anything like this with Anthony, who was the only man in her life. Lord, how embarrassing, the woman thought. To come to such a wilderness for help in order to save the family, and look at yourself. Barbara, look. Oleg's voice distracted her from such thoughts, and she looked in the direction where the guy was pointing. The sun was rising over the horizon. Barbara was truly delighted with what she saw, because she had almost never seen a sunrise like this, and what she saw amazed her. Bruno, it's so beautiful here that you can't even imagine. Probably for me. A villager cannot understand all this beauty. But I ask you to come into the house. Barbara entered the house and looked around. Is this really how people live in villages? Everything in the house was done with taste and skill. TV and refrigerator, microwave, massive table, and beautiful carved chairs. In general, this could be called a merchant's house, but not a cab driver's house. Yes, she should live here. Apparently, Bruno saw it all on her face and said directly, "If you want, you can stay here as long as you want." Bruno, thank you, of course, but you practically don't know me, and you never know what trouble I came here with. Yes, what a disaster. The man has your woman, but you cannot conceive a child. Do not argue. I see a lot too. But you, Barbara, decide your fate. The man shook his curly head and did not continue what he wanted to say. Bruno understood that silence is often golden. And Barbara smiled and thought for a minute maybe she really should leave her Anthony and start living here with this local handsome guy in this distant village and give birth to a bunch of little kids. God, how she wanted this to simply forget her past and come here. Bruno, thank you, but their conversation was interrupted by young people who had just managed to put things in the rooms allocated to them and went out into the hall. Alex looked carefully at Bruno and Barbara and immediately understood everything, but did not show it. Bruno, what about your famous tea? They say that you brew it with special herbs. This is what it is. But sit down. I'll put on the kettle and treat you to more honey than you've ever tasted in your life. When will it be possible to see Grandma? Don't worry, we won't miss it. In our village there is a small church, and then the church bell rang, which means the service is over. Then we can get ready. The woman nodded her head and sat down on a bench that stood under the icons, while Bruno and the young people set the table. After half an hour, such an aroma wafted through the room that you could lose your head from this sweet variety, and the smell of pies and honey made your stomach growl. Wow, what smells! What a treat for the eyes and belly, Helga said and reached for the pie. I'm so hungry that I'm ready to eat everything. Eat up, girl. You, as a future mother, will still need strength, Bruno said and looked at her carefully. Helga almost choked from these words, but casting a sideways glance at Bruno, did not say anything to him. Maybe this Bruno really knows that he won't even have to go to his grandmother. Barbara thought mentally. Good afternoon. Barbara crossed the threshold of a small house standing on the edge of the forest. Come on in. Don't stand in the doorway of my house. I'm glad to have guests. A stately and beautiful older woman, with a long braid, she looks like the heroine of old paintings, but certainly not like an old woman who brews another batch of potion and dries bats. As I understand it, you are coming to me about your husband. Yes, my name is Barbara, and my husband is Anthony. And I also came about the children. There is no way we can give birth to them. Yes, and you will not give birth to them from your own. He walks, and as long as she keeps him under her thumb, you will not live. Yes, and without her you would have separated. It's just a matter of time. Barbara was simply stunned by what she heard and almost fainted, leaning on the door frame. To avoid falling, she grabbed the door handle and closed her eyes for a second. Yes, I see that you didn't know about it, although you internally suspected it. So quickly sit down at the table. Here, have a drink. Barbara sat down on a bench and took a wooden mug with a drink from the witch's hands, drank it in one gulp, and, looking at it, said quietly, "What am I supposed to do? What should I do? Waiting for a new husband? Although no, your destiny has already found you. Just wait a little and everything will be fine for you, and your own home and children and a good husband." Are you sure about that? Barbara still hoped that this was some kind of prank, and she would now get up, go home, and everything would be fine with them. Wait, and your destiny will come. I wonder who is my betrothed. Barbara looked at the woman ironically, not knowing how to react to the words, believe them or take them as a joke. You don't believe me, but I'll tell you one thing: he will have blue eyes. Dark-haired. Yes, you yourself will recognize him among many. Such a prince on a white horse. And Elsa burst into cheerful laughter. Then she sat down next to Barbara and looked carefully into her eyes. Taking her hand in hers, the healer began to stroke it and whisper something in an incomprehensible language. The woman sat spellbound and looked at her carefully, not knowing how to react, and then she simply began to feel inclined to sleep, and my head involuntarily dropped into my hands. Sleep, my girl, sleep. You didn't come here from a good life, from your orphanhood, but I will take away all your troubles, and may you dream about your real destiny. And Elsa carefully laid her down on the bench, put a pillow under her head, and went out into the yard where a group of young people were sitting. She glanced at the eldest among them and waved her hand, beckoning him to her. I see you are the eldest here. So listen, Barbara is sleeping now. Don't worry, everything will be fine with her. What do you understand, students? Yes, we have folklore expeditions, and if possible, then maybe you can tell us local legends, songs, or signs. Yes, young people these days are not too interested in magic, and even my granddaughter over there refused the gift, and I was so hoping to pass on my knowledge to her. And what will happen to your gift now? Helga looked carefully at this still strong woman and bit her lip, afraid to ask too much. What will happen, my dear? And she looked at another as her successor. Is that allowed? I take it this is a man? You understand everything correctly, man. And although in our family it is customary to pass the gift from grandmother to granddaughter, but if God is not worthy of a girl or something else, the gift should be passed on to a man. Interesting. What if he had no talent for your knowledge? My dear guests, understand that each of us has magic, and sometimes it hides so deeply that it is simply difficult to awaken it. But it exists, believe me, believe me. They sat and talked about everything and nothing, and Barbara was sleeping, and most surprisingly, she dreamed of the same Bruno who brought them from the station. But in this dream, it was no longer a simple man in old jacket and sneakers, but a handsome middle-aged man looking at her intently, and next to him stood two beautiful blue-eyed children. Barbara shouted his name so loudly that everyone on the street heard her voice and jumped out and quickly rushed into the house. Barbara, are you okay? Helga was the first to run up to her and took her hand. Yes, it was probably a dream. And there was Bruno who brought us here, two children. He took them into the house. Our house. So I saw my betrothed, thought Elsa. Barbara herself did not understand why she was so angry at the words of this woman that her future husband would come to her in a dream. But she jumped up from the bench and quickly ran out into the street. The woman, not understanding what she was doing, quickly headed away from the Elsa house towards the village with the only desire to pick up her things and leave here for her usual little world. Barbara, wait, where are you going? Bruno's voice sounded so unexpectedly that the woman tripped out of the blue and fell to her knees with all her might, painfully breaking her knee. Bruno, who asked you to scare you like that? Now my knees are broken. Forgive me, for God's sake, let's go, I'll treat your wounds. I have a first aid kit at home. It's not far from here, a few houses away. Already at home, Bruno himself treated her wounds and carefully looked at her face. What did our seer tell you? Judging by the expression on your face, you didn't like it at all. Imagine I didn't like it. I went for advice, but the outcome was completely different. Well, this happens in our world. Elsa said that there would be another, and this one was different. You, Bruno, came to me in a dream with 2 small children. Now Bruno himself was taken aback by what he heard and almost dropped from his hands the can of milk that he had brought from his neighbor. Is this really her, his destiny, which he has been waiting for so long, and which Elsa herself spoke about? This is the turn of events. He put the jar on the table, took out a cup and poured milk into it. He handed it to the woman. Drink this milk. Don't want. They've already given me something to drink in the morning. And after that it turned out that you are my destiny. What will happen after this milk? And she nodded towards the table with her head. Nothing will happen, because the milk is fresh. But whatever you want, I'll drink. Having poured himself some milk, Bruno drank the cup in one gulp and, putting it on the table, sat down on the bench. It turned out strange. But if this is true, then this woman is his future wife, and he will have the children he so wanted. Barbara, what if you really are my destiny? And in your dream, did you really see our children? Bruno, do you understand how unrealistic and stupid this all is? We have only known each other for a couple of hours. We are seeing each other, one might say, for the first time. And you are talking about a family that may not exist. After all, I am married and I have a husband. Barbara, I'm sorry if I allowed myself more than I should, but I believe and I really, really want to have a family, children. And you are such a beautiful woman, I don't dare detain you any longer. At least you can always count on my hospitality. Thank you, Bruno, I understand you, but it all seems so unreal and mystical to me. How? It's like a fairy tale. Bruno looked at the woman with a smile and noted that she smiled back at him. And thank you for your hospitality. If you accept, I will come to visit you again. Clean, so relax. Come. I will always be glad to see you. That's what they decided on. And in the evening, Bruno was taking the whole company back to the station, where the fast train heading to the capital was supposed to stop for. 3 minutes. Bruno helped load things into Barbara's carriage and, looking at her, said quietly, "If you need my help, come. I will not betray you, and I have enough money I can provide for you." Bruno, thank you. I'll think about your proposal and, if necessary, I'll come. She stood at the window and waved her hand to him, and Bruno stood on the platform, and his heart sank with melancholy and sadness. That's how his love left, and he couldn't do anything. All we could do was wait and hope that the witch was right and Barbara would return. Barbara drove home, thinking about what the local healer told her. Barbara, did you get answers to your questions? Alex looked at the woman carefully. Don't even know. I had more questions than answers. What should we do with them? She shrugged and turned out the window. I began to look at the trees, stations, and houses flying past without finding an answer. Barbara thought and thought and thought and thought, and time passed inexorably, giving no hope for a better outcome. Anthony, hello. Here I am. Barbara tried to put a smile on her face, because according to legend, she returned from vacation and should have been fresh and rested. But the answer was silence in the apartment. Strange. At the station, she called Anthony and said she was on her way. To which the husband snapped, "Come, I'm home." Yes, Anthony was at home, but not alone, but with Jadwiga. The woman finally came to his home and spent the night on her lover's marital bed. Tea. Now, Anthony, I'll probably go. Now your wife will arrive. I don't want her to see me. Now I will decide in this house. I'm tired of you and I constantly hiding, and I think we should talk frankly with my wife and amicably decide what and how. Are you sure? The mistress looked at him carefully and stroked his hair. Yes, I am sure. In the meantime, my wife is traveling. The couple was so carried away by each other that they simply did not hear the door open and Barbara enter the apartment. She called her husband, and without receiving an answer, followed the noise into her own bedroom. What opened before her eyes instantly threw the woman into shock, and she simply did not know what to say, what to do. Barbara stood and looked at all this obscenity and simply remained silent. but Jadwiga noticed her first and screamed. The woman pulled the blanket over herself, covering her naked body. "Anthony, stop." She pushed him and pointed at the doorway with her eyes. "Barbara, weren't you taught to knock?" There was anger and indignation in his voice. After all, his own wife dared to stop him at a very interesting place to knock. "Anthony, are you serious? You brought your mistress into our bedroom, and I have to knock on the door of my own apartment." "Yes. In the meantime, please, my dear wife, prepare some food for us while we rest." From such words, Barbara was not only speechless, she fell into a kind of stupor. Stupor shackled her thoughts and will, and leaving her suitcase in the corridor, she obediently went to the kitchen. A mountain of unwashed dishes, leftover potatoes on the stove, dried soup, all this was waiting for her there. Anthony's voice sounded impudent, arrogant, and mocking. "Imagine, my dear husband, I cooked soup." And she threw a pan of boiling water onto the bed, almost hitting Anthony and his mistress. "What is your crazy wife doing?" Jadwiga screamed and jumped out of bed naked, grabbed her clothes and began to dress feverishly. She should be sued. Look, I have a burn on my legs. Better yet, take her to a mental institution." Madhouse? Barbara could not believe her ears and the fact that her husband did not react in any way to his mistress's words. "I'll call the police now and they'll take you away from here." "Barbara, calm down and don't shout. We need to talk about how adults can decide, so to speak, everything amicably." "Amicably, my dear husband. They decide to dress and not jump out of bed. You don't have to worry. I don't need your excuses, explanations, and everything else." She threw the empty pan on the bed and went to her room. She began to collect things in her bag, throwing them away without folding them. Barbara grabbed documents, money, and the few jewelry that her husband had given her from the table, and throwing everything into a small backpack, ran out of the room. Barbara quickly headed towards the exit, but her path was blocked by Anthony, who had managed to put on trousers for decency. "Barbara, where are you going? What are you doing? Don't you see?" Jadwiga said with a malicious smile. "She simply leaves you, and you should just file for divorce." "Jadwiga, I didn't give you my word here. Let him clean for you, cook, iron your shirts, get along with your mother and father. Or have you forgotten what your parents told you when you married me?" Anthony would never forget these words. When they first submitted an application to the registry office, the father threatened, "This is your first and last marriage. Take care of your family. If you get divorced, all your property will be transferred to your daughter-in-law. And it doesn't matter for what reason they would divorce, there will be no children, or the wife won't please. My mother and I will always be on my daughter-in-law's side. Moreover, Barbara Sirota, and to offend such people is a sin. It's a sin, father, to live with someone you don't love. But I won't leave Barbara." But now he remembered that conversation, and he had no choice but to bite his lips and think about what to do. Jadwiga jumped out of bed at such words and, like a fish, gasped for air. She simply did not expect such a turn of events. It was not easy for her to accept the fact that her legal wife so easily accepted the very fact of betrayal, but also that this person has every chance of ending up on the street, and in the status of a beggar and homeless man. And who needs it? Anthony tried with all his might to restrain his anger and not raise his hand against his wife, so as not to kill her. "Do you understand that it was a moment of weakness?"
So minute that you had enough time to get from work and here. Anthony, don't try to tell me stories now. You have been with this woman for quite a long time, and thank God that everything turned out this way.
"It happened. How is that?"
Jadwiga could not forgive anyone for disgracing her like that, and not even allowing her to get a word in.
"Jadwiga, you are a grown woman. You were simply used. You satisfied your own ego, and that's all. Or did you think that he would give up his wealth for you? Never. Has he ever given you a valuable gift?" "No, I didn't give it. Only a bouquet of lilies of the valley, and even then from our city flower bed." Jadwiga, of course, blatantly lied about everything, trying to downplay the importance of Anthony in her life, as well as the volume of financial investments in her. "You see, did you want to cheat him out of money?" Barbara stopped for a minute and mentally wondered if she had taken everything, if she had taken all the most valuable things. Barbara came out of the entrance and looked carefully. Yeah, there's Anthony's car. The neighbors on the bench have been gossiping since the very morning the kids have been scurrying around in the sandbox. The woman put her backpack on the bench and thought for a minute. Where should she go? No, as a last resort, you can, of course, call your mother-in-law and ask to stay with her for the first time. Barbara didn't even know how and what to do next, because Anthony knows where she lives, or rather, she lived before, and where she works. For the sake of money, he will pester her with his visits, ask for forgiveness, and try to return her. But no, I won't let you interfere in my life. What if you return to the village, to that same Bruno, to his log house, and stay there forever? Barbara thought to herself and sat down on the bench for a minute. But then the front door slammed and Anthony ran out into the street, all disheveled and angry. Apparently the showdown with Jadwiga was serious. Look, her husband's face is so red. The anger makes my eyes flash like lightning. He looked for Barbara, and when he noticed her on the bench, he exhaled with relief and approached, trying to speak as calmly as possible. Barbara, I ask you, let's talk quietly and calmly. Let's talk like adults and reasonable people. How's that? Do reasonable people really just drag all sorts of indecent things onto the marital bed? Well, you see, she tempted me. But I love you. Don't drive me away. It seems to me that you are more worried about your parental capital than about me, or where I was on how to resolve the issue with children. What would you do if she got pregnant? Would you live with 2 families? But this is a utopia. Your parents would not accept this state of affairs. And where would you do something? Oh, Anthony, tell me, please. Don't know. Anthony really didn't know what he would do next. After all, he never planned his life so far ahead. And now I will still stay with you. No, Anthony, I just don't need you. Sorry, but I'm leaving you.
Okay, now I have a question. And where do you intend to go?
He stood and looked at her with an angry, twisted face, cherishing the last hope that his wife would ask to go home. Believe me, my dear hubby, this question should not worry you in any way. Yeah, that means you have someone to go to. And you will tell me that I am cheating on you. Were you really planning on leaving for someone else? I don't have any lover, and you shouldn't attribute your own sins to me, and I can go, for example, live with your mother for a while, and then think about who I should be with. She turned around and, picking up her bag, walked towards the roadway, where on the side of the road she simply raised her hand and began to catch the car. But the woman did not want to upset Mary, and she will tell her all her adventures later. Now it's time to think and think about everything calmly. And where are we going, dear girl? The driver winked at her cheerfully and turned the ignition key in his old, but still working car with checkers on the door. Come on, she waved, so to speak, without looking at the train station. The driver nodded his head in understanding and rushed off, trying to drive carefully and avoid getting into holes and potholes so that the passenger with sad eyes, God forbid, would not get seasick. They drove for quite a long time, about 15 minutes, or even 20. Although, needless to say, it was the peak of the lunch break, and it was also Friday. Many residents of the metropolis tried at these moments to leave the stuffy city, but she wanted to see Bruno again. Sorry, did you say something? The driver looked carefully at this strange passenger, who was muttering something absurd under her breath. Did you tell me something? Oh no, sorry, I didn't say anything. Probably from an old habit. The taxi driver nodded understandingly and continued on his way. And Barbara continued to look out the window at the city landscapes flying by, and with every second her confidence grew more and more. Confidence that she should go to Bruno and come what may. And let me be considered a walker, but at least this is honest. And then I'll go to court. The taxi driver looked in the mirror at his passenger and did not say a word. You never know what kind of clients you come across. The main thing is that they get paid. And then it's no longer his business. Barbara paid the driver and, taking her bag, entered the old station building. She looked at the display of departing and arriving trains. Yeah, here's the direction she needs. Girl, give me a ticket for the evening train number 157. Yes, full. When the ticket was in her pocket, Barbara realized how hungry she was. Yeah, from one train to another. And I didn't even have time to change clothes, eat, or take a normal shower. That's why she wildly wanted to throw off her dusty clothes, stand under the stream of hot water and wash away all her sorrows. But in the evening, Barbara sat comfortably in her compartment and, taking out a mirror, carefully looked at her reflection. It's good that I at least washed my face in the toilet, otherwise I would have walked around looking tired and exhausted. It's such a pity that she didn't take Bruno's phone. After all, even if he doesn't want to accept her, he'll simply send her home. So what should she do then? Yes, do nothing. I'll just go back to my room and continue working. Although why on earth would she return to her little room? She legally has the right to part of the apartment, which his parents gave her and Anthony for their wedding. Therefore, to hell with dogs. Out of principle, I won't let you live comfortably with your mistress. And it's true. And this Jadwiga wanted not only to grab her husband with a hook, but also her property. What if she can get pregnant? Barbara tossed and turned in bed all night with such thoughts, but could not sleep a wink. Just before dawn, she went out into the vestibule and began to look out the window. Forest, fields, power lines, all this flashed before her eyes, like her own life, gray and joyless. And I really wanted normal human relationships, warmth and comfort. Girl, your station is next. The conductor handed her a ticket and smiled sweetly. So all my life on wheels. The carriage is her home, Barbara thought. But apparently everyone chooses their own destiny. It's nothing you can do. After 20 minutes, she was already standing on an empty platform far from her house and turning her head just like the first time. Everything around was shrouded in fog. It was so quiet that you could hear the dew dripping from the grass. Yes, neither Bruno nor his cart and mare were visible. Was she really so mistaken, and he simply didn't come? But he said that he's here every day. But as it turned out, he lied. Barbara stood and almost cried. But then in the distance she heard first quiet, and then more and more distinct clattering of hooves. And now the cart appeared. Has he really arrived? Didn't you lie? Barbara. Bruno immediately recognized her figure from afar and thought to himself with surprise that he had made a mistake. But no. What are you doing here? You just left. Bruno, is your proposal that you can stay in the village relevant? Barbara tried to squeeze out a smile, but it came out somehow crooked and askew. Yes, sure. I see you are alone here. There is no one else. Then get on the cart, and let's go. The man helped her sit more comfortably on the cart and lightly spurred his mare. Now they were driving in silence, not saying a word. And what could we talk about? Bruno understood that Barbara had not come here again out of a good life and asked to stay with him. And the woman felt uncomfortable explaining something along the way. Barbara, can I ask a question? Why did I come here? You know, your healer was right. And my husband is not just walking around, but he also managed to bring his mistress into our house, put her on the bed, and asked me to make them some soup.
Yeah, thought Bruno, this woman has nothing good. Apparently, she really didn't come here out of good happiness, but that means Elsa was really right. This woman is his destiny. That's exactly what she said in the evening, when Barbara had already left. And he drank quietly alone in his own kitchen.
You're still standing there drunk, Bruno. Elsa's voice sounded right next to his ear, causing the man to tremble so much that he almost spilled the glass of tincture. Elsa. You walk like a cat. At least cough at the threshold for decency. What if I'm with a woman? Yes, with what woman? Except with this little white one. And the healer nodded at the bottle of cloudy tincture that stood in the very center of the table. You shouldn't get drunk. Look, you'll still sleep through tomorrow morning. Well, tomorrow will be a normal morning, that's all. That's not all, said the old woman. I had a vision that Barbara would arrive tomorrow. So you should be at the station as usual. Understood me? I understand. I haven't drunk my brains out yet. But why would Barbara come back? She didn't believe a single word you said. Well, whether you believed it or not, it's none of your business. But she will most likely believe her own eyes when she comes home and sees her husband in bed with his mistress. Are you sure about this? And if she doesn't see it, then what? She didn't even look in my direction. And you say that she will come to me? Let's argue. If he comes, you will take me as godmother to your child. Yes, deal. If so, then I will carry you in my arms for this. He hugged the old woman, and she patted him on the back and spoke quietly. Better stop drinking and go to bed. Tomorrow will be a new day and a new life. True, from the very morning Bruno kept doubting whether he should go to the station or not. After all, the witch did not receive on Mondays and the people knew it. But now maybe it's not worth going. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, The man ran his hand over his stubble. No, I'll probably go. Now I'll go and shave and go now. All this flashed through his head in a matter of seconds. And Bruno, quietly nodding at the mare, glanced sideways at Barbara. She too was silent, mentally recalling how she found her husband in bed and that his mistress turned out to be a Polish woman. Bruno, do you believe Eliza? Do you believe what she says? Why not believe? Just recently I couldn't even imagine that you would come, but now you're here. He wanted to say that she herself asked to stay with him, but he bit his tongue just in time. And I myself asked to live with you. Is that what you wanted to say, Bruno? If you don't want me to live with you, then stop your horse. I'll go back. No, Barbara, you definitely won't leave here now. And if you are embarrassed by the fact that you will live with me as a guest, then I can tell you right away, marry me, and you will be a full-fledged mistress in my house. The woman looked sideways at Bruno and was just about to say something when her mobile phone rang. Looking at the screen, Barbara picked up the phone. Yes, Mary. Harry, Barbara, where are you? Bruno has been calling me since the morning. He says you're missing. No, you are neither at work nor in your room, in the dorm. And now I'm going for the second round to the village where the healer Elsa lives. For the second round. How can we understand what is actually happening? Were you there or not? Was. But I didn't really like what you told me the first time. Oh, how can I tell you, Mary Pavlovna, your son definitely has a mistress, and I want to divorce him. But where are you now? I'm going to the village, and I'm thinking of staying here for a while. Are you sure about this? My mother-in-law understood that nothing could be solved by shouting and swearing, so she tried to speak calmly. Yes, just don't get me wrong. It's hard for me to forgive betrayal. I need to think and make a decision with a calm mind. That's right, Barbara. But please call me. Do not get lost. Of course, I understand that my son is not perfect, but I would not want to lose a daughter-in-law like you. I heard you, and thank you for everything that you have done and are doing for me. Barbara hung up the phone and looked into the distance. The first rays of the morning sun illuminated the wheat field, and a light breeze made the ears look like a gentle sea. This is the truth, how fate can put everything in its place. The mother-in-law turned out to be closer to her husband and mother, and the stranger simply took him in and sheltered him in his house. Did she, mother-in-law, call?
Bruno looked at the woman carefully, trying not to show his excitement.
Yes, she said that Anthony was looking for me. She probably asked you to come back? Oddly enough, but no. After all, he understands I don't have the character to forgive betrayal like that. But you, Bruno, are still ready to host a married lady. Ready. But may I ask, how long will this sweet lady remain married? Not for long. Just believe me, we need to think about the situation a little now. And in a few days I'll just file for divorce. That's all. Bruno wanted to ask what about us, but he bit his tongue and turned his horse towards his house. He opened the gate and led the horse into the yard. Then he helped Barbara bring things into the house and, pointing to a cozy back room, said, "This is my daughter's room. You can stay here as long as you want." "Do you have a daughter?" Barbara looked at the man in surprise. "Yes, I had a woman when I was young, but it probably didn't work out. But I don't abandon my daughter, I help her. And if you want, I can introduce her." Bruno's words startled her. But the woman just smiled and answered, "Yes, we should probably get to know each other, but a little later. And to be honest, Bruno, I don't even know how to react to your proposal." "Which one exactly?" "To meet my daughter, or remain a full-fledged mistress in your house." "He will only be glad of this." Elsa's words behind them made both of them flinch. "You are back after all, Barbara. So I was right. Yes, and you were right. I wanted to come to you later, but I got ahead of you." "Nothing. I always say what I see, and it always comes true. Anyway, on the occasion of your arrival, I brought you a cake. I baked it myself. Knew you'd be back, Barbara." Barbara looked carefully at a real masterpiece of culinary skill with pigtails, curls with 2 doves on top. Wow, just wedding. But we are not husband and wife yet. But you are a couple that fate brought together. And you shouldn't deny this. Bruno will make you feel good. But if in doubt, don't rush into a decision. Just wait and see, and your Anthony will show his true colors. And then you will finally make the right decision." Elsa turned around and went to the gate. And the man and woman stood at the porch of the house and, dumbfounded, looked after her. "Yes, Barbara, and if you want, then come to my place for tea tonight with Bruno." Barbara nodded her head silently and turned her gaze to Bruno, who also looked at her incomprehensibly. Anyway, which have not be avoided. By evening, Barbara had gotten a little comfortable in the house, laid out her simple belongings, and having prepared dinner, sat down on the veranda. "How do you like it, Barbara? In my house, if you need something, you always say, 'We won't buy it in our store.' This way you can go to the city. I have a car in my garage." "Do you have a car? What about the horse and cart? Why don't you drive a car? You see, this is a kind of production, an entourage or something, but nothing more. Believe me, Barbara, this is all the man gestured around the house and the farmstead with her predictions and help. You can be sure of this." "Yes, I'll try. But Bruno, tell me, what did Elsa mean when she said that my husband would show his face?"
But you can ask her this. It's time for us to get ready for a visit.
Here is the familiar little hut again. Grasses on the walls, sedge on the floor. Everything here breathed with a certain mystery, about which epics and fairy tales are written. It's so fairy tale-like here. Perhaps the only thing missing is a black cat.
But why is it not enough? I have one like this in my house. Apparently he just decided to go for a walk. Or, as always, he went out hunting for mice.
Wow. Elsa, can I ask a question? What did you mean when you said that my Anthony would show his true colors? But really, should I be afraid of physical harm from him? Or will Anthony, as always, limit himself to a verbal skirmish? Yes, you see, Barbara, your Anthony is not as simple as it might seem. But I won't tell you anything yet. You must see everything for yourself with your own eyes. But I hope he won't harm me. She really was scared. After all, you never know what you can expect from an angry husband. Don't worry, he won't cause any physical harm to you or anyone else. But you will see everything for yourself later. Barbara nodded her head, but the anxiety did not go away. The unknown scared her. But the woman's anxiety was also noticed by Bruno, who simply took her hand and, leaning towards her face, spoke quietly. Don't worry, Barbara. I'm also difficult and will always protect you. Do you understand me? His voice sounded different, not the same as always, but confident and tough. There was a sense of animal strength in him. This sent goosebumps down Barbara's arms, and looking at them, the woman noticed how the hairs stood on end. She simply nodded her head, mentally agreeing. But why lie to yourself? It was so nice when a man solves all your problems, when he takes responsibility for his own woman, home, and in general. But apparently Bruno's intonation somewhat frightened Barbara. And noticing the expression on her face, the man immediately spoke, quickly softening his intonation. Barbara, I'm sorry if I scared you, but I'm really not a mama's boy or some guy from the village. I have a higher education, 3 diplomas, and work in a hospital. As fate would have it, he even became a novice in a monastery. But now I live here. Wow. Wow. You, Bruno, have a biography. But Barbara still wanted to say something when at that moment she received a call. Yes, someone knows how to interrupt a conversation, the woman thought. But looking at the mobile screen, she sighed heavily. Well, yes, who else could call her? Faithful hubby Anthony, who apparently cooled down after a fit of rage and decided to dial it. Barbara, where are you? The once beloved husband asked without words of greeting. Anthony, why do you need this? Well, you have your polished girlfriend, so live with her. I will file for divorce myself. You don't have to worry. Yeah, there's really nothing to worry about. And will you also leave me the apartment, which, by the way, my parents bought? I'll leave it if the court agrees to give me a divorce. A minute of silence on the phone spoke eloquently. Anthony was calculating all the pros and cons, feverishly wondering what the catch was. Barbara, tell me the whole truth. What's the catch? You are giving me the apartment just like that, without trying to defend it for yourself. I'm not as mercantile as you. Come on, how pious you are. The woman heard her husband's heavy, angry breathing on the phone, and could not understand how until now she had not noticed all this, all his anger and greed and lust. God, how blind she was. And why are you silent? Or do you have nothing to say? Just imagine, there is something. Why do you think we haven't had children until now? I wonder why. You shouldn't answer though. My dear husband, it's all my fault. That's what you always said. No, all this time I gave you one special herbal decoction, and thanks to it you could not get pregnant. And why? I didn't need a wife like you. You were picked up on the street like a puppy, warmed up and given a successful marriage. But why do I need a wife without family and tribe? A beggar who could not give anything to me and my children. Is that all you wanted to tell me? Said Barbara, surprised that she had not yet fainted from what she heard. Yes, Anthony shouted into the phone. Barbara simply pressed the end button, not wanting to continue this conversation any further. She leaned her head against the warm wood of the house and closed her eyes. Lord, what an idiot and a brute she lived with all these years. And she firmly believed that he loved her, that everything would be fine with them. Did your husband call? Bruno looked at her carefully and nervously fingered a black rosary with a cross hanging on it in his hand. Yes, he threatened. And you are right, and Elsa. He gave me a very, very unpleasant surprise. So to speak, he opened his eyes and showed his own black insides. Elsa smiled and, raising an eyebrow, looked at the woman, as if asking, and what did he tell you there? Barbara sat with her eyes closed and didn't know whether to tell them or not everything that Anthony had told her. But all this put such pressure on her from within that she simply did not have the strength to remain silent. Elsa, you can't imagine how hard my soul is right now. I just don't know how to live with this anymore. Tell me, maybe I can help you with advice. And I, if necessary, with my fists and a gun. Bruno sat closer to Barbara and took her hand in his. But the woman didn't even notice it. You see, all this time while my husband and I lived, he slipped some herbs into my food or drink. I don't know where, and I couldn't get pregnant. And all this time, my husband bullied me and reproached me for being infertile, for not being able to consider myself a full-fledged woman and mother. A tear quietly rolled down her cheek, but only Elsa noticed her, who sat down next to her and quietly stroked her hand. Nothing, Barbara, believe me, every poison has its own antidote. Me and Bruno will help you feel good again. Do you think I can have children? What are you saying? And you don't need to understand me. With these words I conjure fear and sadness. But Bruno will bring water from my stream and we will drink tea. And then everything will be fine with you. By the way, let's go to the forest today. Can you help me find a fern flower? Today is the night when your deepest desires can come true. An hour later, the company went to the local lake, where almost the entire village had actually gathered. Wow, Barbara thought, looking around. There were tents with benches and tables around the lake. A variety of foods were cooked over an open fire, and there were trays and refrigerators with drinks and sweets. There was no crowd of young people. Don't be surprised. We have ethno-tourism at the highest level. And my experience and knowledge help the villagers get on their feet, earn an honest living, and show guests a different side of village life, and ancient wisdom. Honestly, I couldn't even think. Barbara, we also have swings installed on the field. Let's go for a ride. Swing? Doom. The woman's surprise knew no bounds. Yes, these type of boats on high poles. Believe me, it's very exciting. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into the field, where indeed a high swing had already been installed, and people were crowding around it to take a ride with the breeze. Barbara and Bruno rode on boats, laughed like children, enjoying the wind in their hair, the night sky, and the fact that they could surrender to the holiday like this, and not think about anything. And Barbara rejoiced like a child, not at all reproaching herself for being able to rejoice and enjoy freedom. I feel as good today as I have never felt in my life. And I'm not even the least bit ashamed of my actions, because I left my husband. I'm not even angry at him for his words, but for what he did. Because why? Bruno looked at her carefully and gently pulled her towards him, putting his arm around her shoulders. Because I'm finally free. Bruno leaned over and gently kissed her mulled wine-sweet lips, lightly and unobtrusively, trying not to frighten off such a moment of trust. The man was afraid that Barbara would push him away. But either nature or herbs or wine made her more pliable to her desires, which she always suppressed in herself, forcing her to respond to his kiss with a passionate and demanding kiss. Barbara, of course, I'm glad that you allowed me to kiss you. But let's not rush. And this is what a man tells me. It's strange, usually it's the partner who has to say it. But no, don't think anything like that. You are a beautiful woman. I like you very much. But I don't want you to regret your momentary weakness later. Barbara pulled away from Bruno but did not let go of his hand, but turned around and pulled him towards the lake. Then maybe we can go make wreaths and float them on the water. Let's go. They wove wreaths, threw them into the water, picked flowers and rejoiced at the night, like children lying on the grass and counting the stars in the sky. Good morning, Barbara. Bruno lay leaning on his hand and looked at her with a smile. Bruno, I hope you and I didn't sleep yesterday. I wanted to ask Barbara, but I didn't dare ask such a frank question. Weren't we asleep? No. You don't have to worry about this. We were by the river, weaving wreaths, counting the stars in the sky. You leaned on my shoulder and just fell asleep. Why didn't I bring you home? Well, because you asked me to take you here. Here is the answer to your question. How did we end up here? Yeah, I don't know, Bruno, what came over me yesterday. Probably your tea or local mulled wine. But I admit, it was the best day of my life. But Bruno, there is no need to spoil such a wonderful morning. Let's put this aside for a while. Then come on, get up. I'll prepare you a real rural breakfast at home. Oh, that already sounds great. Bruno helped his unexpected night companion get up and led her home again. They walked along a field path, smoothly turning into a rural road, and chatted about nothing. And Barbara more and more often caught herself thinking that she felt wildly, to the point of pain in her heart. She always wanted to walk like this, talk, and not think about anything. Barbara, what are you thinking about now? Bruno looked carefully into her face, hidden under the flowers of yesterday's flower. Yes, you just shine from the inside. Is it true? Yes, you know, Bruno, I want to tremble in my knees and just walk like that and not think about anything. Then I propose to meet the dawn in the field every morning. How do you like this idea? Unless, of course, you sleep until noon. No, and I don't sleep until noon. That's why I like the idea itself. And it's true. What can I say? Fate itself brought these two together. It was brought together in the most mysterious way when, a month after they met, Barbara and Bruno soon got married, and the local priest married them in an ancient wooden church, where many people from the village and surrounding towns came. This was the first wedding in this temple. And the clergyman himself said then, by combining this couple in a legal marriage, we launch into our hearts not only love, but also the piety of our Lord, love each other, be fruitful, and live happily ever after. Oddly enough, Barbara's ex-mother-in-law came to their wedding and was sincerely happy for her former daughter-in-law. She even asked Barbara for forgiveness when she was leaving and asked to come visit them. Things didn't work out for her son with Jadwiga. Anthony then took her to the station for the last time and asked, "Did you even love me?" Well, how can I tell you? Anthony probably loved her in her own way. But you yourself understand that you have nothing, because your parents gave all their property to Barbara. Why do I need this? If we had children, where would we live? In my apartment? Sorry, Anthony, but you can't build a family on such conditions. So the girl cheerfully kissed him goodbye on the cheek and jumped into her carriage, waving to him from the steps. Yeah, what a fool you were, Anthony. You lost everything you had, your wife who loved you, the opportunity to have children and a home, and his parents abandoned him. They simply stopped communicating and answering phone calls. But one fine evening this happened. Anthony, hi, this is Barbara. If you still remember. Anthony made me sweat and get goosebumps all over my body. Of course he remembered her and could not forget her. No matter how hard I tried, I immersed myself in my work. Drinking and partying, nothing helped. Hello, Barbara. Of course I remember hearing from my mother that you got married. Well, your free life didn't last long? Yes, not for long. That's not why I'm calling. Barbara thought for a minute whether she should have said this or not, but she still said, I want to thank you so much for bringing Jadwiga to our house, and I witnessed it. Otherwise, I would not have returned to this village, would not have decided to have a relationship with Bruno, and would not have gotten pregnant. Yes, Anthony, I am carrying twins under my heart, so thank you very much. From what he heard, Anthony's cheekbones twisted. They played with anger, but the man could not say anything in response. All this could have been his, but it never happened, and all due to my own stupidity. Is that all you wanted to tell me? Yes. Although no, I signed over the apartment that your parents registered in my name. So you can live in peace and build new relationships and tell her thank you very much. You can gloat. Jadwiga left me after a few days. Now I'm free like a bird. But when I meet her, I will definitely say your regards. Thank you, Anthony, and all the best to you. Barbara hung up, and Anthony just held the phone in his hand for a few more minutes and listened to the short beeps, not knowing how to react. No way. Barbara is happy. She has a new husband and 2 children, and he was left without a home and family. Even his relatives abandoned him. And he himself is to blame for this, because there is no one else to blame. But Bruno himself had a different opinion. Barbara, maybe you shouldn't have called him and told him all this. He gently hugged her shoulders, approaching her from behind. Bruno, I've wanted to say this to his face for so long that I probably wouldn't be able to restrain myself. And as Elsa says, it's better to regret what you did than what you didn't do. As if your ex-hubby wouldn't do any harm. But you are with me. Barbara looked at her husband in bewilderment. With you. But Barbara, just understand, you can't always cause harm just by deeds. You can use an unkind word or a conspiracy. But that's it, you definitely got this from Elsa. Or maybe she has it too. But tomorrow I'll still go to her and let her give you a talisman. Which, I don't want your ex-husband to have any influence on you. He kissed his wife tenderly, stroked her rounded belly, and put his ear to it. Barbara, the children are already knocking their feet, asking to be brought into the world as soon as possible. And it's definitely a boy. By the way, what did we decide with the names? The woman smiled and looked at her husband. This issue has been on their agenda for a long time. And if they decided on the name for the girl Mary, in honor of the former mother-in-law, then they did not decide on the name for the boy. Let's ask Elsa. She will be our godmother, so let her give the boy a name herself. Barbara nodded her head in agreement with her husband and kissed him tenderly on the cheek. And really, is it worth arguing with the man you love when everything can be resolved with the help of a wonderful godmother? They stood on the shore of the lake and watched how the sun set in the field, how the winter sun hid behind the rare branches of still bare trees. Barbara was happy that now she had a person next to her who would not just say, "I'm with you," but also protect her, lend her shoulder, and protect her from problems. And may everything be fine for everyone, even Anthony.